everyone, and welcome to the Superhero Rewind commentary podcast show. It's me, Captain Logan, and joining me tonight is my wonderful co-host and sidekick. It's Austin, the Day Ghost. We got a treat for you tonight. Austin and I are going to watch and talk about X2, and then immediately following this, they will be separate streams, but we are also going to do the Daredevil Director's Cut tonight. It is the 20th anniversary for both of these films, and this is something that Austin and I thought about doing pretty close to the beginning of the commentary project, and we've been kicking this around this year, and it's going to be a long night, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and both movies that Austin and I are intimately familiar with, know really well, have talked about ad nauseum before, at least I have, and we'll see if any new insights and ideas come up. Austin, I mean, I've got a couple. I've got a couple already at the ready in the chamber. We'll see what else happens to pop up. Did you have any? I mean, don't bring them up yet. You know, like hold them back. But did you have like very many brand new thoughts about either of these movies as you were watching them? Did you have new like experiences with them?
I'd not with X2. X2 is just like a very just run down, get through it. I've seen this a billion times. The Daredevil Director's Cut I've only seen once, so that was like a bit more of that because it was going back to it.
Yeah, I hadn't watched that in a good long time. The last time I did was for another commentary years ago, very shortly after the first season of Daredevil. So it was, a Netflix Daredevil. So it was difficult to have perspective with it. And I had that, again, still some here, but it was a different watch because it's been a long time since I've seen either of those things. And so it'll be interesting to talk about that when we get there. But I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. We're doing X2 first. So Daredevil released both of these same year, obviously, because it's the anniversary for both of them. X2 released after Daredevil, but we're tackling it first, partly because it's a little shorter than the director's cut. We figured more folks watching live would probably be interested in X2 over Daredevil, and I mean, nothing against that movie. I don't want to sit here and compare them too much, although I'm sure a little bit of that will happen naturally. And we're, by the way, talking about doing more of these double feature things, so strap in with this. We're trying to knock out as many movies as possible, so especially because we're separating them out into different streams. What we don't want to do is spend the whole time just making it a comparison contrast exercise of the two arbitrarily chosen films that we did that night. But the other reason that I wanted to do X2 first is because it's a little bit meatier of a story, and I thought we would want to be at, and Austin said this too, we would want to be at our most lucid and awake for this one probably over Daredevil, but we definitely want to give the Daredevil his due as well, so we'll certainly try to be as, with it as possible when we get there.
Yeah, because it'll definitely be a lot of this time we'll talk about genocide and prejudice, and next time we'll just be Daredevil done did a flip right there.
I thought you were gonna say next time we'll go we'll talk about how we want an effing costume, and then we'll never get one.
Yeah, and I forgot that he drops an F-bomb in that version, so I was very excited when that happened.
I remember people when it came out in the theater going, this just seems like a place for an F-bomb, and then it turned out that they actually shot it that way. I don't think people knew that when they said it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I never knew that, so that was awesome.
Let me read these couple of super chats real quick. Feel free to leave one of those or a regular comment as we go along. We're going to interact with you guys watching live as much as possible. Thanks a bunch for tuning in after the fact if you're doing that as well later on in the future, in the not too distant future. I got to get back into an X-Men place now. My head was in Daredevil for a moment. I got to go back to X-Men now.
You got to snicked your way back to the past.
Bamf back, as it were. As long as I know where I'm going, it'll be okay. Bob the Hun, $5 super chat. Why do you think Toad and Sabretooth never came back? We know they were in an earlier draft, and Nightcrawler and Toad had a whole scene together. According to Singer and the writers and producers with this movie, I watched two different commentaries in preparation for this one, and according to all those guys, there were 40 drafts of this movie. There were tons of things that were taken in and out, and They were actually, I might be conflating it now. It
Well,
actually, now that I'm thinking
uh,
about it, it actually might be Mark Steven Johnson that said there were 40 drafts of Daredevil. I'm not sure, but there were
well, with
lots.
X2, I know there was the Hater script. There was somebody
Yeah,
else's script. I can't remember who it is. And then they like combined elements, and then they got Mike Doherty and somebody else to come in and do rewrites. So there is a lot of that with this movie too.
yeah, like however many official drafts there were, they were changing stuff all the way up to shooting and even on the day. And that's a big thing I want to talk about this time because it's not something that I remembered if I was aware of it before at all. There are some major plot points that Singer didn't even know about until he was shooting it, where he was like changing his mind, changing stuff on the fly. It is more Iron Man and more Iron Man-y than anybody gives it credit for, which is fascinating. Like, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but for instance, the scene when they're making camp, where Jean Grey and Wolverine talk about the relationship that they have never had, where Wolverine tries to kiss her, that was not a thing that they knew they were going to do until right then. Like that wasn't in the script at all. And at the beginning of the movie, they didn't even know they were going to kill Jean Grey yet. They decided that at the museum, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
Like just huge major plot points in the film. One of these more so than the other, but yeah, with Toad and Sabretooth, it was probably just a matter of there feeling like there were too many characters, and the reason that they axed lots of mutants that they had put in drafts or had really kicked around, like Angel was supposed to be in this movie. A lot of stuff that winds up in X3 was supposed to be in this.
Yeah, because Beast was as well in the
Yep.
Danger Room and Sentinels and all this stuff. With Toad specifically, I always just got the sense that he died in the first movie.
Yeah, me too.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, he gets struck by
Sabretooth is
lightning,
just
but you also wouldn't have been that surprised to see him if he came back.
no, that's true. I mean, maybe a little, but
If he'd been more of a fan favorite, it wouldn't have been that surprising if they brought him back.
if he came back, would we have to have a scene where he gets like a rebuttal to the infamous line, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, he would have to say something like that. I don't know. That was lame. like
Oh, I was
Storm?
thinking like,
That didn't make a lot of sense. I don't know.
Like
I don't know
you'd
what
be
you're
like-
talking about. Like,
do you know what happens to a storm when it gets licked by a toad? I don't know. Let's
not a
find out.
lot, but I guess I'm gonna try it.
I
Yeah.
don't know, but I'm gonna lick you.
Oh God.
That's what he would say, 'cause he's stoned.
I guess what I was imagining, just because of the actor playing him, was that he comes. It turns out that he didn't die, but he, for some reason, he's on like spindly legs, like Darth Maul.
Even though he got struck by lightning.
Yeah,
he
somehow
has, like,
his
metal
body got
goat
cut in
legs.
half over getting struck by lightning. Yeah, that's what I'm
That'd be
imagining. Do
That'd
you know
be
what happens to Toad when he gets struck by lightning? I guess he winds up cut in half. Tom, $5 super chat. If you did Marvel Mania before Spawn Year, would you have had Doomsvent say there are no exits that way, Wolverine, or that way, Captain Logan? You know what? I might have thought of that line. Yeah. I absolutely might have. That is an obligatory thing that will have to come up again. And I am watching the disc and not watching this on streaming because it's on Stars. And I've been using discs mostly for the show anyway.
Is this not Disney Plus?
Not here.
Weird.
Not here. Here at Stars. But keep in mind that that's like in the States, Austin's in Canada, and there they have everything together. So here in the States, Austin, it's a package deal thing. So, so Stars is connected to Disney just like Hulu is, and you can get a package that has all three.
Okay, that's so weird.
But I don't have that, and you probably have everything Stars and Hulu has.
I'd assume so. At least everything that's in the Disney library.
Robert is accidentally put in the 4x3 disc. He hasn't put his DVD in for so long that his is in the full screen aspect ratio.
Oh no. I remember in that era, when you'd get DVDs with both,
Yeah,
and I'd go to my dad's house and I'd put in the widescreen one and he'd be like, "Take that out. We gotta watch this in full screen."
I can't do it anymore.
Um,
Because I still have
yeah.
some discs that are in full screen. I'll put them in and I'll be like, oh my god, did I never replace that? Like I don't have. I mean, it's nice to upgrade to Blu-ray, and I do that when I can, or I do that when I think of it. But sometimes I'll just have the disc. It's like fine. But if it's not in widescreen, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I don't even remember the last time I've had to even think about that.
I apologies for the long preamble. Let's go ahead and get into this, especially since we're watching 2 tonight.
Yep.
So make sure if you want to watch it with us that you get it past all the menus to timestamp 0. And if you're streaming it, just put it right on timestamp 0, and make sure there's not anything before the Fox logo. Get ready to press play when I say now. Anything else that we need to bring up before we get started, Austin?
No, I think we're good.
This is a sequel. Last time, Magneto tried to turn everybody into mutants, and then he failed at the end.
Hmm. Well, at least he didn't try to turn everybody into magnets.
Yeah, a couple of people thought it was kind of weird that we were skipping X-Men 1 and going right to X2. These are things I've covered before in multiple ways, and I was kind of wanting to jump around. So a lot of movies, especially when they have like direct sequels and numbered sequels, will probably do in order, even with a lot of stuff in between. But because we had an anniversary thing going on here, I was kind of cool skipping X-Men. We'll go back to it eventually.
Hmm. Yeah, somebody asked why we're not also doing Hulk, because that's 2003.
Well, because I did a 24-hour stream a couple weeks ago, and I just don't want to. I just don't want to be up too late. But we should maybe consider trying to front load that and get it done before the end of the year, maybe too. That's a good idea.
Yeah, we can try for that.
I wasn't even thinking about that. I don't want to make this a precedent where everything from a certain year must be done in that in a big anniversary year. But these are 2 real formative superhero movies for me, so I kind of wanted to celebrate them this year. But Hulk would be a good thing to do that with too.
Oh,
It's
very cool.
It's a flawed movie, but I mean I don't hate that movie or anything.
Yeah, I haven't gone back to it in years.
Yeah, me too. I haven't done it since Marvel Mania, and I haven't watched it without talking over it in much longer.
And that's me for watching Marvel Mania.
Oh yeah.
The last time I watched that movie was also with Marvel Mania.
Fella, didn't you guys do a Hulk commentary not that long ago? No, it was Marvel Mania. I mean, I haven't talked about the movie in 6 years.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think. Okay, here we go. Everybody get ready to press play. We're just about to do it. I've got the clock on the screen there if you need a timestamp as we go. And like I said, feel free to leave regular comments and super chats. We'll talk to you guys as we go along. And everybody, please press play right now. I did not remember, Austin, that the X lingers slightly on the screen going all the way back even to this movie, and I think it did it in X-Men 1, too.
I think it starts here, but maybe it does it in the first one.
Now, the da-da-da-da we don't do until Days of Future Past.
Mm-hmm.
But it wouldn't have made sense to do it here because nobody would even know what it meant because that theme starts in this film.
Yeah.
You could have done that. You could have foreshadowed. It might have been kind of fun. It was like, da-da-da-da. You're like, hey, what was that? And then, da-da-da-da-da. You're like, nope, that was... You should have done that because that theme is great. Put it in everywhere you can put it.
Sure. I don't have the obsession with the theme that you do, but sure.
No, that's fine. But I love it. I don't care what anybody says. So, Xavier's speech about what mutant kind is, and questioning its place in the universe, and if humans and mutants can coexist and all of that. It's a little different in every movie, of course. It tends to be about a lot of the same things, but even though it's not the same every time, it with this movie is kind of turning into the Star Trek Where No Man Has Gone Before thing, which is interesting because it's Patrick Stewart doing it, and he has the TNG speech, going all the way to having Jean Grey repeat some of it at the end of the movie after she has died, just like Spock in Wrath of Khan, which was not an accident. They were calling back directly to Wrath of Khan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then later on, that will become the Transformers movies with the Optimus Prime speeches.
Oh yeah, that's true. Going backwards to X2, I'm having a hard time not having a lot of flashbacks to the things that Days of Future Past calls back to with this movie now. Like, it's hard to look at it just as its own thing anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. Well, in this, like, right away is the greatest sequence in any of the X-Men movies, and probably of Singer's career.
As far as action sequences go, yeah, I think I agree with that. It's the thing in this movie, and maybe all of them going up to a certain point, that holds up the best. You could release this right now.
Mm-hmm.
This does not feel like a 20-year-old sequence.
Well, and this is the type of thing that we just don't really get anymore, especially from Marvel.
Do you mean because of how much of it is done practically?
Not just that, but like there's a lot of like mystery and intrigue, and like we're building suspense.
It takes its time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Which is kind of one of the big hallmarks of at least the first couple of X-Men movies, because Singer was trying to make them as, legitimate movies as he could, and try to bring people in that don't care about comic books. And in some ways it really helps them, and in some ways arguably it maybe hurts them a little bit, particularly for X-Men fans. Mm-hmm. But I think this is a really good example of a place where that really works, where like it's gonna hook its claws in you whether you know who Nightcrawler is and whether you care about X-Men, because it's just a really good intense action sequence.
Yeah, well,
and it feels real big. Places. You don't expect it to open in the White House.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just one of those places where we're not afraid to scare the kids that are watching.
That's an excellent point. And then it's also really intriguing if you do know X-Men, because you're like, why is Nightcrawler doing this? Mm-hmm. Is he going to be a bad guy? It's a cool way to play with his demonic look without throwing him under the bus and turning him into a bad guy. And maybe it's easy. We did this with Hawkeye also in Avengers. Like, maybe it's the easiest way to do that with characters is mind control, but at least he's not mind controlled the whole movie, or even very much of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, in terms of the intrigue stuff, I think it also works that we also just don't know that he's mind controlled until way later.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's in the first act.
Yeah, but I just mean, like, it's not like we start... I was just thinking because you said that with Hawkeye, and that's where we start with him.
Yeah, and you know right away that he's mind controlled.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's a good point. It's also kind of ironic to me that the scope of this feels huge right at the start, because it's an attempt on the president. It's in the White House. It's if he actually succeeded at this, it's the biggest thing that ever happens, right? Or like it would be one of the biggest things that ever happened in American history, and it would start a new civil war. And then one of the things that really works about the whole movie is the minimalism of it, and the fact that it doesn't end with a big beam out of the sky and a real typical, huge superhero fight. But then the stakes of what's happening are still global. Like, it's one of the best examples of a small movie that is actually huge, and it's very successful because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think it works in that it's playing off of the fears of the time, because we're only, 2 years after 9/11.
Daniverse says the Ottman score having a choir certainly helps. I love the choir all the way through the Ottman score. It's important to note that he didn't write that opening piece, because that's part of, I think, a Requiem or something. I haven't looked that up in a long time, and I didn't think to look it up for this. But that is a classical piece of music, which is the reason it's not featured on the soundtrack.
Oh, and okay.
I always miss it when I go back and listen to the soundtrack, because it feels like a big part of that movie, but it's understandable why it's not there, because it's effectively a piece of incidental music.
Yeah, which makes sense, because when you first hear it, like, it's very clearly like an opera track.
Yeah, and it works great. I also love the way this is bookended. Both visually and thematically, that Wolverine is looking into his past. He's trying to figure out his origins. He comes here and finds nothing. It seems like a desolate wasteland, and we're actually looking at what will become the climax of the film.
Mm-hmm.
This
No, that's great. And then
underneath this is where it will all happen. It's really cool.
yeah, exactly. And then obviously there's an element to that with Wolverine as a character where he doesn't have all of his memories and he's just looking at the surface.
That's kind of a cool transition.
Mm-hmm.
With his face into that wolf. I mean, it's not, exactly a Wolverine, but it thematically really works because of the whole question of how much of an animal is Wolverine at heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And at the end of the day, the whole point will be his past doesn't matter because he has the capacity to control his own destiny, and whatever he was in the past, he doesn't have to be now. It really does that. The secret of the ooze is that it's ooze thing in the best way possible. Where, like, you don't actually, Wolverine and the audience don't really actually learn all that much about his past in this, but it sort of feels like you do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I really like that, where it's like he comes face to face with his creator, with his origin, with the ostensibly horrible person he was in the past, if Stryker is to be believed, and yet he doesn't ever get a lot of answers about what exactly he did or who he was or any of that. He just, I mean, he kind of leaves knowing what he did in the first place. Well, somebody did something to me. I guess it was this guy.
Yeah. I mean, it does that thing where it keeps the mystery of what's happening with him while also delving into it. But, like, you don't lose the mystery of, exactly what happened.
Yeah, it feels shockingly satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it shouldn't. So
I think you get enough for it to work with this narrative.
So I mentioned that Singer didn't know that they had not decided that Jean Grey was going to die until they shot this scene, and apparently he took her aside after they shot this. He kind of rewrote it on the fly and was like, "I really need you to play up this idea that your powers are growing and you're scared about it." That apparently wasn't there in the first place, and then he explained to her later why that was. To see if she was okay with her character being killed here, and it was very much that Spock thing with Wrath of Khan, where she didn't know she was coming back, but and was okay with being killed because it gave her more to do, and she just like Scott and a lot of other characters desperately needed more to do, but it's not because of that. The movie suffers a bit because it's not fully developed and fleshed out. I don't think the movie or Singer really know why exactly this is happening to her, except we want to build to the Phoenix Force. So all through the movie, she's going to be developing. Sorry, I have to say this, and I probably said this in commentaries with this before, but this scene drives me crazy because it looks like a PSA for not smoking.
Well, this whole sequence looks like it was made for a commercial or for TV. It reminds me visually a lot of, and we'll have this even more so in Daredevil, of that teaser trailer for Spider-Man with the World Trade Center.
Oh yeah, and I just feel that way every time I watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even in the theater, I remember going, boy, this looks like a commercial. Looks like they're either selling something or they're trying to get you to not do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've always said that I think Singer feels like a good TV director as opposed to like a great film director. And this movie gets more cinematic by the end than I remembered it being, but I still do have that in places.
Yeah. And again, if we have to compare them, I feel like Daredevil has that more than this does, but maybe more with its ideas than its visuals.
Mm-hmm.
Daredevil makes a lot of decisions that are kind of TV, particularly like CW and Smallville, and this movie has more stuff that just occasionally looks a little TV. But I think the production values are overall really, and again, I like the minimalism of it.
Yeah. Well, I think the difference for me looking at both of them at the time is that one is a first-time director that was a music video guy, and the other one is somebody that was being touted as one of the next best directors.
Yes. No, that's true. And Mark Steven Johnson had less to work with.
Yeah, absolutely.
and you have to give him a little bit of leeway because of that. But we'll talk about that when we get to that movie. Did you see the girl? By the way, the sign is just a shot from the first movie because they couldn't recreate it apparently.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Did you
hilarious.
catch in the museum the girl with the yellow shirt with a giant X on it?
No, I don't think so.
I don't know if that's supposed to be a particular character, but it looks almost like an ecstatic shirt, particularly because it's on yellow.
Oh, weird. That was probably just like a 90s like extreme shirt.
Yeah. But that was that's the nearly the X that's in the ecstatic logo.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's possible they made that shirt as a reference.
Dagan Spear says, I think Scott says since Liberty Island, Gene's been different, and he does say that. Considering Magneto's machine was meant to activate mutation, I think that released the Phoenix. And that's all you have to go on, but I just don't feel like it's enough. Like, maybe that's what they were thinking, or they just, or he just used that as like a handwave explanation because he really wants to get there.
Hmm.
But why didn't it affect anybody else?
Well, I think what your issue is not that we don't know exactly what it came from, is more so just we don't really develop it. Like, there's a throwaway line, and that's about it.
Well, and I don't fully know what the stakes are about it. And that will become a problem toward the end when she decides to sacrifice herself. So, like, because she says, I'm afraid something is coming. And it's difficult to tell if she's talking about the Phoenix, because, like, it doesn't come from without, it comes from within, right? So is she talking about the Phoenix, or is she talking about the horrible stuff they're going to deal with at the end of the movie, where it's almost like a premonition? And, like, her powers don't do that, but that's kind of how it watches.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I think one of the issues too is if it's from the Liberty Island thing, why is she the only one affected?
Yeah.
So like, shouldn't it be from her like being poisoned from Cerebro?
Oh.
Oh, no,
That's-
because it's Professor X that's poisoned by Cerebro, but just her using it. 'Cause
Yeah.
she's
That's
she's,
better.
Like, harmed by it.
That would make more sense, especially when you get to X3 and it's all psychological.
Hmm. Yeah, and part of that is just they don't know what the Phoenix is yet.
Yeah, and I want the Phoenix Force to be this like big scary thing that she can't control, and I can't tell if that's really what's happening or if it's just she's scared of it because it's huge and she's afraid she can't control it. But like it I'm getting ahead of myself, but when you get to the end and she decides she has to leave the plane and sacrifice herself, I think it would play a lot better if she did that partly because she was afraid in using her powers in this huge way, she was going to hurt her friends or she was going to explode or something. And initially the plan, it's because of a lot of revision where we don't go back and make the building blocks clear enough. Originally, David Hayter says in his commentary, because again, there's another commentary with him on the disc, he says that the original plan, and I think in an early draft, was that she was going to commit suicide like she does in the comics. And I think when they get to the end of this movie, they're kind of playing it both ways a little bit. I hadn't really had that thought until I listened to that commentary, but now I'm starting to think that's what they did.
Yeah.
A lot of the Chewbacca's Lover, I'll get to your super chat in a second. A lot of the stuff that really works about this movie, I'm finding was kind of lucky in kind of happened late in the game, and that's not knocking it. That's nothing against it, but these big collaborative projects can very often be that way, where sometimes they all come together and sometimes they don't. And this is one that they were making a lot of story changes on the fly, and a lot of them for the better, but some of them, if we had been able to work from a script that was all figured out in the first place, they could have been fleshed out better, and those things could have been more effective. We talked over Stryker's introduction. Stryker is one of my favorite villains in anything. I love Brian Cox. Apparently, he came on just with the Southern accent in the first place, and that was nobody's idea but his. And Singer let him go with it.
Well, doesn't he just naturally have one?
No, he is Scottish.
Oh, yeah, no, of course. I feel like I've seen a few places where he's done it with a southern accent, so maybe that's why I'm thinking of that.
He's just really good at it.
Because
he sounds great.
It's been a while since I've seen clips, but I feel like his Hannibal Lecter has that too. So, like, yeah, no, of course, he's Scottish.
And it maybe seems a little bit typical because of the brand of his bigotry, that he's got a southern accent. He clearly is played as kind of racist, and he's maybe played as a real conservative politician. Like with these things, we never talk about what the parties are, but that guy's not a Democrat, right?
I mean, maybe.
Not to get political about it, but that guy's not going to be a Democrat, right? But I like knowing that it was his idea to make it Southern. So like it's not the writer or anybody throwing anyone under the bus with this movie. It was just a choice the actor made.
Mm-hmm.
And
it works really well.
Yeah, the just kind of Southern good old boy thing. It fits really well with what he's doing. It makes him creepier in some ways, I think.
Yeah, well, and we lose it with the other two strikers in the prequel films, and it doesn't work at all.
That's interesting. Yeah, they don't. Why doesn't the one in Origins at least do it?
I don't know. Because he sucks.
He does suck. So speaking of a character that's going to get mind controlled for the whole movie,
Future Past one.
I'm sorry. What were you saying?
No, I just said, and he's probably better than the Days of Future Past one.
Yeah, well, at least that guy's not there very long.
Yeah.
So you got Once and Future King, which is an obvious but effective symbol, metaphor, thematic connection. Chewbacca's Lover, $5 super chat. This and the Lady Deathstrike scene are better than any action scene in any recent MCU film by a lot. Do you agree with that?
What? Sorry, I missed that.
He just said that the Nightcrawler scene and the Lady Deathstrike scene are better than MCU action scenes in recent memory.
In recent memory, probably. I mean, the Guardians 3 hallway one is one of my favorites of all time, but outside of that, probably.
Yeah, and it is nice. I mean, I don't even want to call them quaint. Like, they're really impressive, but it's nice to go back to a thing like this that's not relying so hard on CGI. And what that hallway fight that you're talking about is doing cannot be done without CG, so, like, it's very impressive, too. But, boy, it's refreshing to go back and see a thing where I just can't even tell where any of the CGI is.
Yeah, definitely.
And I would argue that is true of both of those fights.
Well, and this is what I want from, or what I wanted from, or at least more so from like Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
Didn't get. Even Daredevil, I would want more of that than what we got in Shang-Chi.
So, how much about the Weapon X program do you think Xavier actually knows and is withholding from Wolverine? Because that was a thought I had on this viewing, particularly because of a conversation that he has with Magneto later, where you get the sense there's just one thing that Magneto says about Stryker that makes me think that Xavier was more aware of him than maybe he let on, and it just kind of makes me wonder if there are some things he could tell Wolverine, but he thinks it's important not to, and that he has to figure things out for himself.
I mean, I think he knows everything about Wolverine. Even just from reading his mind, but if you mean like before that,
yeah,
but before he met him, I mean, it's possible he could have read that from Stryker when his son was going to his school.
But you think that he's just blatantly lying to him when he says, "I'm sure the adamantium claws and all these other things are connected"? Like you think he could read into the recesses of his mind and actually know everything and just doesn't tell him?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's claiming he can't do that, and and if you're right, that would mean that when he says like the mind is not a box that can just be opened, that's just all BS, and it absolutely is.
Well, my assumption was always what you'd said right before that, which is that he's also trying to help Logan figure it out for himself. He doesn't want to just step in and be like, "Here you go, boom, you're fixed."
Well, and then the question is, why not just give him that information so that he can go confront it? Is it possible that it's a little bit of that X3 Phoenix thing, where he's afraid that if Wolverine knew who he was in the past, he would go back to that, he would revert back to it?
Well, and there's a very good chance that if he's like, "Hey, Wolverine, this is the person who made you," he's not kind of help guide him to a better place yet, so he could just go in and massacre all these people.
That's a really good point. Well, and with the political situation with mutants and humans in America being what it is right now, he's also going to make that whole situation worse if he just goes and starts murdering people like Stryker.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, hey, big question about Stryker I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you. There's actually a couple of things. One is, what do you think his original endgame was when he sent Nightcrawler to the White House? Like, does it ultimately work out the way he figured it would, or do you think he's changing his plans a little bit on the fly? I guess what I mean is, was he hoping the president would die? Or does it not really matter? Does it work out in his favor either way? Because if the president dies, he can use that as a way to spearhead a war between mutants and humans. If he just attempts it, he's still able to do that just as he does.
Yeah, no, I think it's either way, he will get approval to do what he's trying to do. It's kind of like that Mystique thing in Days of Future Past, right? Where he just needs this one thing to happen so that the government will approve for him to do. I mean, well, and like I said earlier, it's playing into those fears of 9/11, right? Where
Yes,
he needs this one event to happen, and then he can be like, okay, now we're gonna take down the mutants, right? Let's all be gung ho. A mutant just broke in and tried to kill or did kill the president.
and it doesn't feel like an easy master manipulation plot. It feels plausible. It feels like a thing that could work, and like the kind of conspiracy that we know people have attempted before in various governments throughout history.
Exactly.
There is a little bit of a full circle history motif going on with this movie, where Stryker is trying to start something that people unfortunately in history have done these kinds of things.
No, this would be Nightcrawler Gate. Because we just slapped Gate onto everything.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about Stryker is, and you and I discussed this a little bit off camera, but I want to bring it up and discuss it obviously here. Do you think that, and I'll ask the audience too, do you guys think it's odd that Stryker wants to kill all the mutants? Like, he developed the Weapon X program. We should stop for a second and probably just bring up the obligatory thing here with all of the Easter eggs. I actually paused at this time and looked at more of them. And
there's some real weird ones.
Pictures of it. There's
and
so much more than I thought there was. There's this split, this like quarter of a second bit where there's a whole bunch of folders that have even more stuff. It's not just the list that has like Moira McTaggart and like Magneto's kids in it. Like there's one in here. We've now been past it with like 50 folders with a bunch of stuff. Like Omega Red is in there and all kinds of things.
Yeah, and the Maximoffs are in there. Franklin Richards is what I meant to say, not Danny DeVito from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Dude, Franklin Richards is the weirdest one.
It's absolutely the weirdest one.
Like, when they threw that in there, were they thinking maybe shared universe at some point? Or were they just like, well, this is something we have the rights to. We're allowed to put this in here.
Well, I think they were talking about doing crossover stuff. And then I want to say there was, like, issues where, like, Marvel had to approve it. But
the thing I wanted to ask you about Stryker... Sorry, I was going to pull some of these up and read a few. Danger Room is in there. Forge...
Yeah,
Trask, and Trask is cool because that ends up retroactively being a really good continuity thing. Not that these movies ultimately are any good at keeping that stuff straight, but that's cool.
That was definitely on their mind because they were talking about doing Sentinels.
And and comparing and it would make sense that Stryker would have a connection with Trask because, like you said, there were supposed to be Sentinels in this movie. And when we get to Days of Future Past, it will be really fascinating to compare Trask to Stryker. Yeah,
and to X3 Trask, who is definitely connected to Trask in Days of Future Past.
Because those are both human villains that want the exact same thing when it comes to mutants, but for very different reasons. Like, Trask is not just another human Magneto in the way that Stryker sort of is. I'll talk more about that a little bit later if we get to it.
Yeah.
Trask in Days of Future Past actually appreciates and kind of has some affinity for mutants, but he's got that us versus them mentality.
Hmm.
And I guess Stryker and Magneto also have an us versus them mentality, but there's also in ego and a sense of superiority to them.
Hmm.
For Magneto, mutants are gods and better than humans, and we are the cure, as he says. What is that in X3?
It's 3 because that's when they're doing the cure stuff.
Uh,
The big thing with Stryker
and
though is I just feel
Stryker
their
has that with
development.
humans, where he feels like mutants are a disease.
Hmm. So this sequence is just the Pierce Brosnan Bond reunion, where you have two people from GoldenEye and then one from Die Another Day.
I didn't even think about that. That's true. But, well, what's weird about it is it's only sort of a reunion because Die Another Day is the same year.
Oh, that's true. Well, I only just thought of that with Die Another Day, but the GoldenEye connection I had to bring up.
Those movies are in the theater almost at the same time, if not at the same time. And I know that because I was working
No,
at the
because
theater when both of
Die
these
Another
came
Day is
out.
2002.
Oh, okay.
It's the year before.
It was just before it. Yeah. Because, like I said, I was working at the theater. That's why I thought that.
Yeah, because that was the 40th anniversary.
Tom Cassidy is one of these folders.
Oh, well, so they're even thinking about like Deadpool when they make this movie. Is what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Really? Yes, obviously that's what I'm saying. Right.
Well, does it say Tom Cassidy and then in brackets definitely black?
Is it a racist folder? Yeah, there's Omega Red. Some of these are hard to read because they're blurry.
Hmm.
Garrison Kane. I think is what that is.
I don't even recognize that one.
Artie. What's his name? I think that's the blinking kid that doesn't sleep. Maybe because some of these folders are just characters that are living in the mansion already.
When I remember from when you sent it to me like a week or two ago, one
Yeah.
of them was Multiple Man.
Yes, Multiple Man was in there. Yeah, there's some stuff that will show up in the very next movie.
Hmm.
Project Wide Awake, whatever that is. Muir Island. Anyway, it's interesting. I've never gone through all of through very much of this before, so I thought we'd go ahead and talk about it. The thing I wanted to ask you about Stryker, that I started asking about Stryker, is do you think that he would, and I'm asking you guys in the comments too, that he would actually want to kill all the mutants, given that he started the Professor X program, or Professor X, pardon me, the Weapon X, the Professor X program. He might as well be. He kidnaps Weapon X. That's his Professor X program. He starts the Weapon X program, and he is experimenting on mutants. He's trying to use them as weapons. He wants to use them for like military assets. Then when he learns how to mind control them, he uses them to various effects, and that serum is really effective. And there doesn't seem to be a downside. It seems to work all the time. And it wears off eventually, and then you just put it in again, and you keep using people. And so he uses that for his assistant with Deathstrike, which we should talk about because there's a really creepy thing I found out about that that I don't want to not talk about. And with Magneto and everybody. So I guess it makes sense that his ultimate endgame, even with using all of those mutants, was to use them against themselves and destroy them all. But I kind of wonder if he might keep a few around. He's got that line where he says to Xavier, like, mutants are fine. They have their uses if you could control them. And it's kind of weird that he wouldn't at least keep like 4 or 5 around for himself to keep doing stuff with.
So I've always just assumed that he uses his like hypnotized henchmen as fighting fire with fire in terms of this war that they're doing. And then the Weapon X program's only Logan because he's like the one person that could survive it.
Yeah, but he doesn't even need the Weapon X program once he develops the serum because he can control anybody.
Yeah, but the serum comes after the Weapon X program.
No,
right?
that's right. And of course, he can't keep putting adamantium in people. Well, except he found one more. Maybe there's more out there. He can keep experimenting and find more.
But they are all mutants, and we gotta kill all of them.
Yeah, well, and I'm not saying that his motivation for wanting all the mutants dead isn't very effective. It works really well, and it makes him sympathetic to the degree that you buy why he's so angry. And I think they took it to the right level of like traumatic and horrible, like unthinkable play. Really disturbing. I'm glad it's not a flashback. Like that your imagination makes it worse when he's talking about his wife bringing a drill to her temple to bore the images out and all of that. But it's important to remember that he was already somewhat bigoted toward mutants even before that, or was at least scared of them, and had not had the opportunity yet to, or had not taken the opportunity yet to see them as like mutation is less than a disease, because he sends his kid to Xavier's school not to learn to control his powers, but to be cured.
Which is basically like a gay conversion therapy, right?
That's the metaphor that Singer's going for, certainly. And that's why he's got the line from the mom, like, have you tried not being a mutant? Which, when this first came out, and I was not thinking about, because I honestly, when I first saw this, I didn't put that together. I didn't get the metaphor for homosexuality and people not people not being okay with it, not going along with it. And I thought that was a really silly, weird, stupid thing for a mother to say. I even complained about it in my initial rewind. It plays for me now in a way it didn't back then.
Yeah, I think it's one of those lines where it's easy to look at it and be like, it's a little on the nose. But, like, if you don't have that, like, it's fine.
Well, it's not even that it's on the nose. Like, my issue with it before, when I didn't realize that it was even a metaphor for anything, but besides just, like, general bigotry, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't looking at it for things that you can't see that people think you should be able to control. I was thinking about it as your just basic, like, metaphor for racism or sexism. So when I first saw the movie in 2003,
have you tried not being black?
Yes, it's like if she said, "Have you tried not being black?" And I'm like, "That's dumb. Like, he can't. He's not gonna be able to help that. He is a mutant. Like, now she could have said, "Have you tried just not using your powers?" And the argument against homosexuality, equivalent of that. If you think that's unethical, or it's against your religion or whatever, would be well, maybe you're gay, but you just don't act on it. Have you just tried not using your ice powers? Just don't act on it. It's wrong. It's not fair to the rest of us. You just shouldn't do that.
Well, it's that thing.
But I'm not even saying that's what Singer should have had her say. Like now that I understand what it's a metaphor for, I think it's fine. Like I think it totally makes sense. As dumb as it is, but the point is, if you're gay, it's dumb to say that too, right? Like that's the point, and people do that. So
being gay is a choice, kind of a thing, where
right,
like that's her kind of ideology.
Yeah. Sorry, we talked over that. Probably Ian McKellen's best bit of acting in the movie.
Yeah,
I think.
They should have killed me when he had the chance.
They should have killed me when he had the chance. It's so good, and it's also really sad. There's some nice pathos there when he says, like, I couldn't help it. I had to tell Stryker everything.
Well, I like that he's like both scary, but he's also like apologizing to his friend in that moment. Like, well, it plays really well, both from a character perspective and just to the audience.
That's exactly right. And it's fun after the first movie to see him victimized in that way. Mm-hmm. Like, because you're surprised that you're feeling bad for him in that moment. And then when he gets his comeuppance at the end and turns back around and he's the bad guy, there's a part of you that's like, oh, he's as bad as Stryker. And, like, we knew that, but he's been in this victim place for a while. You kind of feel for him, or at least I do. And then you get to the end, and
especially because of his backstory.
Exactly. And I like comparing those two. That's interesting. But I find myself conflicted toward the end, because he wants to do exactly what Stryker does, just in reverse, just now kill the humans. And in some ways, he's better than Stryker because he at least tried just turning us all into what he is so we wouldn't have anything to fight about. When that didn't work, now he's gonna kill everybody. This sound that I don't know who this character is supposed to be. It's somebody, right? The siren girl.
Yeah, I was gonna say is it Banshee, but no, I don't think it's supposed to be Banshee.
Maybe it's a female Banshee.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. X-Men's one of those things that I'm not very well read on.
I always have to turn the volume down when there's other people around not watching this movie. When I'm watching this movie, when you get to that scene, because that sound is loud and irritating to people.
Yeah, I just turn it up when that part comes on. We got somebody sleeping in the house. Better turn this part up.
I like Bobby and Wolverine. A part of me wants even a little bit more screen time with them, but there's so many characters in this movie, it's hard not to have that in general.
Mm-hmm. I would honestly kill like a bajillion people just to have that ability to freeze a drink with just a breath.
Well, and I praised the first movie for this a little bit, but this movie has it even a great deal more. All the practical uses for powers and just creative ways to think of what you would do if you had these powers, and that's one of the things that gives it a sense of legitimacy for a typical movie-going audience that hasn't read comics.
Yeah, no, I love when we get really creative with powers. This is one of my favorite examples of that in the climax when there's like the hallway full of army guys and all of their grenade pins just like pull off and fly away.
Oh yeah,
like that's so good.
I forgot about that. No, it's super cool.
Yeah, no, it's just like a clever, idea to use that power.
Well, and how much respect do you have for the choice to use an actual physical giant block of ice?
Yeah, no, that's super cool.
They weren't going to do that. It was supposed to just be like fog or something.
Oh, I assumed it would just be CGI.
Yeah, and then when they decided that it was supposed to be like fog that then is turned into ice, but they couldn't make it look good.
You could also maybe have done that with glass. Like, I think as a kid, I assumed it was just glass.
Oh, yeah, and then you just put condensation on the outside of it.
Yeah, like you just kind of make it up to look more like ice, right?
Something the writers and producers talk about in their commentary that I don't really see, I don't know that I agree with, is they talk about how they wanted to give us the impression that there were drills for these kinds of situations with the students, that they would be prepared for a break-in like this and for people to come after them. And I don't get the sense anybody's all that prepared.
I think to a degree.
They're not freaking out, a lot of them, which is good, but I don't get the sense of like, okay, these are the exits, this is where you're supposed to go. Like, is that really in there enough?
Yeah, I get that just from the like Colossus when he punches the wall and they all meet up in this one spot to go through it.
Well, that's true. They're maybe they're more organized than.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely freaking out because you just naturally be freaking out in the situation, and they're all kids. But one thing we should also mention too is how.
And guys, I'm sorry, I'll get the super chats here in just a minute. Go ahead.
It's just how big it is at this point in time that we're seeing Wolverine like massacring all these people. And like how different that was.
Because it took forever to get there. Because you're expecting that in the first movie, and you don't get the Berserker Rage thing at all. Do you feel like it's too much of a compromise to get a lot of that, but there's like no real carnage with it? We're real inconsistent with blood and gore with this movie.
Oh yeah, no, because I feel like at the time, even without that, like all of this stuff's really brutal for a comic book movie. Yeah. Especially that shot earlier on where the guy's walking by and he like stabs him through the foot as he's walking.
What's crazy is they had to cut it down. Like, they would have gotten an R rating if they had let Wolverine Stryker's gonna say nature here, which is very important. It's the thematic crux of his entire arc. He wants to control nature. He's going against nature, and then the big difference between him and Magneto and Xavier is that the two of them, in their own different ways, think that they're that they're like celebrating and going along with nature. But anyway, according to Bryan Singer in his commentary, there was a place where like he's got a really intense scream or like yell that was like too intense for the movie, and then there were things that they had to like scenes they had to cut up because we would hold too long on him stabbing people and stuff like that. So like it does seem more gruesome than you expected it to, but it was even more so apparently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this is one of those big moments where I think a lot of people saw it and they weren't expecting him to just be running around murdering people. And
you didn't think he'd actually stab anybody.
And I feel like one of the only times we've ever recaptured this feeling is in the first Iron Man, when you have that first sequence when he lands down and clears out the village.
I love Stryker as a twisted father figure.
Mm.
Where like he's seeing in a weird way like the man he created him kind of his father, but more like his creator. And then that's interesting because Stryker is kind of putting himself on a pedestal, making himself kind of a god to compensate for the fact that mutants have abilities humans don't, and he wants to look at them as a disease.
Well, and he becomes kind of like a Dr. Frankenstein, right?
Yeah.
And what he's done to Wolverine.
No, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the whole point of Frankenstein is the whole point of that book is playing God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, what are you saying?
I said, can you explain to me how Wolverine can start his car with a claw?
How does that hotwire something? You just
and wouldn't he have to hold his
it.
arm right there and drive like that?
Well, the way they play it is that somehow that hotwires it. Like he just stabs the right place and then it magically turns the car on?
It's so weird.
Or are you saying he stabbed the keyhole? Is that what was happening?
No, I've always thought he stabs into the keyhole and like he like turns and it starts the car.
Yeah, if he pulled it out after that, it should stop the car.
Yeah.
Unless it perpetually keeps it on.
Well, I mean, he stabbed way too far into it. If that's the case, too. So I don't know.
Everything's got to have an X, Austin.
Yeah, of course.
Let me get the super chats here. Bob the Hun, $5 super chat. The creator of Nightcrawler. Who created Nightcrawler?
Is it not Claremont? I'm not really sure.
I thought it was until he said that. And now I'm gonna make sure, because some of those characters, you would expect to be.
Or is it one of those characters? Because I know there's like.
No, it's Dave Cockrum and Lynn Wein.
Because I was about to say, I know that there was some of those like big Claremont characters that were actually created like right before that.
Yep.
Claremont
this was in '75. That was Giant Size X-Men #1. That's why.
Mm. Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know which of those he's talking about, but I would imagine it's probably Lynn Wein. Well, I guess I don't know. But anyway, so Bob the Hun says...
If it was Lynn Wein, I hope he also cried when he saw the Swamp Thing movie.
Well, let me read it first, because nobody knows what you're talking about. The creator of Nightcrawler was apparently so happy with this portrayal that he cried in the theater and said it was just his character on screen. And that's really sweet, because they did a really good job with him as little as he has to do, I think.
No, I am fairly certain that Nightcrawler is my favorite X-Men because of this movie.
Oh, wow.
Because he's just awesome. And Alan Cummings is great in this. It was always a huge bummer that he didn't come back for 3.
And, like, maybe it was and maybe it wasn't.
I mean...
Just because the way that movie's handled?
Yeah, but I mean, at least I'd have him being fun.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Give me
that, Cap.
You don't know what the writing would be. You know what they would have
course.
chosen to do with him.
Well, that was like the whole basis of the X3 game. I don't know if you ever played it, but like part of that story is just about writing out Nightcrawler because he's one of 3 playable characters in it.
Oh.
It's him, Iceman, and Wolverine. It's really weird.
That is weird. Like, it's Wolverine and his amazing friends.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of that, if I remember correctly, takes place in Alkali Lake. There's like a whole thing where they go back there.
So after First Class came out, one of the continuity complaints that people had, besides Magneto apparently had nothing to do with building Cerebro, which we make a big deal out of here, was the Hank McCoy cameo. And then after you get Days of Future Past, it kind of works okay, because it seems like he goes back and forth a lot now.
Well, and if you
between
look
looking
really
human
close,
and
you
looking
can see
blue.
needle marks on him in that scene. So
I'm sorry, say that again.
said if you look really closely, he has needle marks on that news program.
No, he doesn't. Just stop it. So apparently, originally, this dirty, gross scene in the bathroom that I think is probably the thing that's pushing the PG-13 rating harder than maybe anything else in the film. Apparently, this was originally supposed to take place in this guy's apartment or in her apartment. I forget. No, she wouldn't have an apartment. His apartment.
Yeah, she's gonna have clothes, let alone a house. Cap, come on now.
Did you know this? This bathroom was a set built for X-Men 1.5 that they never used because they scrapped that as a cut.
Oh, weird! I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I don't know what that scene was. I can't remember what that scene was going to be, but they were actually going to go back and do reshoots and add scenes.
I feel like it probably would have been in that bar scene in the first movie, just by like how kind of dirty and gross.
Oh
it
yeah,
looks
maybe
there.
so.
Like,
In
maybe that's
Canada?
where- Yeah, that looks like a Canadian bathroom.
Does that look like your bathroom?
Yeah,
Is that where you're going to go during the break?
yeah, exactly.
In that bathroom?
Yeah. Rebecca Romaine's also just great as Mystique. She's kind of like an unsung actress in terms of models turned actor.
Absolutely. Yeah, she's a legitimately really good actress.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've now seen her more because of Strange New Worlds, and despite, issues I have with that show, she's really good in it.
I didn't even know she was in that.
Yeah, she's number one.
Interesting. Because obviously I know her more from, like this stuff and Punisher.
Yeah, she's Pike's first officer.
Okay.
She gets a lot to do in that show. Unfortunately, more than Pike does. Because Pike is put to the side way too much in that show. But
so she is his Mystique, is what you're saying?
No. So I would argue that this is maybe Cox's best performance is in this scene.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to do really compelling background exposition like this, and he just makes you understand everything about him in this scene.
Mm-hmm. See, I think his best performance is when he's playing Mystique, playing him.
Oh no, that stuff's great too. Sure, that's his most entertaining performance. But this is the most layered he gets as this character.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is just one of those movies where he's so perfect throughout. Like, I don't know if I can name a spot where I'm like, this is his best scene.
When he's talking about his son Jason and what his wife did and says to bore the images out, that's one of the big things that always sticks with me.
Sure, yeah. That's very visceral.
And all of this is just so twisted and screwed up. And speaking of twisted and screwed up, can I talk about the weird Deathstrike thing I found out about?
I thought you were going to mention how Jason looks like one of the guys from They Might Be Giants.
Oh my god, what have you done to John Linnell?
He lobotomized
Now
him.
he's never gonna write state songs!
If
How
they were
dare
giants
you.
before, they're not now.
Oh my god, now he's never gonna be able to tell us that Montana is a leg or Iowa is a witch or anything. Anyway, nobody's gonna appreciate that. Anyway, so according to Hader and one of the producers, they just kind of like bring this up nonchalantly. I'd never heard it before, and it's not actually talked about in the movie. So like grain of salt, like if it's not in the movie, I'm not going to consider it as like valid and canon. But this was apparently what was on their minds, like what they were thinking when they wrote it. They claim that Lady Deathstrike is supposed to be his wife, which makes all of that even more messed up and creepy. But it's also one of the big things that makes me wonder if he would actually kill all of them. Not to say that Stryker like cares about her on any human level, but, and this is going to sound awful the way I'm going to put this, but he's got this horrible relationship with her where he's basically got a love slave. And he's going to let her die with everybody else, I guess.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's like a DiCaprio situation. She's 26, so he's got to get rid of her.
Oh my god. I can't even believe you said that out loud. But, like, doesn't that make him even more twisted and messed up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's also using his son, and he's got no issue killing his son, so I don't think he's got any issue killing her.
Yeah, like, if they had actually said that, is that going too far?
No,
Like, if
I
the
don't think
movie
so.
said it, I don't think it is. I think I like it. As horrible as it is, I think I like it because it shows you just uh, how much he doesn't look at them as human beings.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Oh, the way I wanted to,
Well, and then it also,
sorry, go ahead.
because there's also like an implied sexual thing between Mystique and Magneto
Yes.
in this movie, so you'd also be paralleling that a little bit.
Yeah, sort of, except that one's obviously consensual.
Hmm. Yeah, no,
That's not a
exactly.
way where they're just as bad as each other.
Hmm.
This is an interesting camera choice. Let's go under the beer. Like, it's cool, but why? I
Fear. I always just see the end of the trailer in this scene when
Yeah,
he with the cat.
me too. It was such trailer fodder.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm gonna argue it's one of the big things that sold the movie.
Hmm.
Like, I think people really liked that.
No,
See,
it's just like it's a silly little humanizing
that's
moment.
what I was gonna say. Shots like that kind of humanize in otherwise, potentially monstrous barbaric character to people.
Well, and also just add a little bit of levity to this movie that's pretty heavy.
Yeah, and I, Jason and I haven't done the trailer video for the X-Men films yet, but what I remember about the trailer for this is that they actually kind of led with the thematic stuff. It wasn't just all action, action, action.
Hmm.
And they even put the "Have you tried not being a mutant" thing in the trailer.
I
And
remember
yeah,
that.
it plays as like a comedic beat, I guess, but they're actually dealing with, like, the prejudice and the bigotry and people being afraid of mutants and not sure if they even want to consider them human beings.
I feel like you kind of have to though if you're advertising this movie because it's like, what action are you going to showcase in your trailer? Like obviously the Wolverine stuff, but you also want a lot of that to be like a big shocking, like, oh man, look how far we're going with this in the movie. And then most of your actions in the third act, which you don't really want to give away.
Do we buy that Magneto would actually eat that Jello? He just doesn't
Uh,
seem like a Jello guy to me.
I mean, he's old, so maybe.
Oh, is that what they say?
I love my Jello.
I've got no teeth. I have to eat this Jello.
I've got no teeth, and I must eat.
The most elegant, coolest Magneto bit is right here when he gets on the magnetic disc. It's so cool.
Oh yeah. Well, it's one of the things in this movie that looks so comic booky
Yeah.
because we're not going to a lot of those places in this movie, but
No, and
it's
and the,
one
and
of
the first
those.
movie doesn't. The first movie feels almost like too cool for some of that, and this finds a way better balance between
Mhm.
that realism or groundedness. It's almost a dirty word these days with superhero movies. That Singer wanted, and the like 90s Fox cartoon stuff that is really the reason that this property was popular enough for this to get made.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wish he would wear this the rest of the movie, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, this should just be it, because it's kind of creepy.
I
Like,
guess. I don't know.
what if he leaves it? Well, because it sort of looks like he's in half a straitjacket.
No, it definitely does. I just don't think I would want this for his main look in this movie. But I like it as they look. It's
Yeah.
very like
I hadn't had that thought until just now, but
it's very like Blofeld. Like it's that kind of like Bond villain attire.
I also think that everything that happens in the house here is believable. Like the lead up to the son going and calling 911 is all set up, but you don't notice it because he's very in the background. But like he's clearly uncomfortable, and is either jealous of his brother or just terrified of him or doesn't want to think that maybe he's a mutant. Like, there's all kinds of potential motivations for this kid to do what he does. You don't even need to know what they are. It's believable any way you slice it.
No, it's almost better that we don't know.
I think so too.
Because it leaves it up in the air of, like, look at all of these things it could be in terms of reasons for people to be afraid of mutants.
Well, he doesn't have to know what it is. It's an emotional response.
Yeah, exactly.
Real quick.
It could even just be like he's just grossed out by his brother and is like, these things need to die.
Just before I forget about it, because I wanted to make this point earlier, the big thematic connection that I wanted to make between Stryker and Magneto is in their origins. It's interesting that Magneto comes to his worldview, his ideology, his grand way of thinking because of the way his family is hurt by human beings because because of like racial bigotry, and then ultimately because he's a mutant. And with Stryker, it's because nature is harming him personally and his family by making a member of his family a mutant. I just think it's really interesting that one is from without and one is from within.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. We're seeing the kind of different examples of it. No, that's really cool.
We are really consistent with Storm's pessimistic and cynical view of human beings from the first movie to this, even though we don't spend a lot of time on it. But from her scenes with Senator Kelly in the first movie to her scenes with Nightcrawler here, she has retained... And I don't think it's character regression. I don't think she came far enough with Senator Kelly, even though she maybe came to sympathize with him for like 3 seconds before he turned into a big puddle.
Mm-hmm. Well, it almost has that thing where we get her like one big scene with him in X1, and then we're gonna have this one big scene of it. So it's almost like in each movie we're gonna have this moment where we kind of humanize her, and we see that she's not as peace between both in the way that a lot of the other X-Men and Professor X are.
Yeah, and I mean, it'd be nice to have more of a sense of how she got that way and what her background is, because we don't get any of that. And it would have been maybe cool if in the third movie she was drawn to the dark side a little bit.
Well, even if we
because
just
of that
acknowledged or like delved into that a little bit more than we do, considering she's like the co-lead of 3.
Yeah. But like whatever story you wanted to tell in your third movie, I would have loved to have seen that come to a head either direction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where she really had to face it head on in a way she hadn't before.
Yeah.
Because she clearly like appreciates Professor X's philosophy enough to be there, but I think she wants to be better than she is, and that's why she's there. Is kind of the sense
maybe for a third movie could have done something where the Phoenix comes back and is like a midpoint between Magneto and Professor X, and she gets her own people, and one of them could be Storm, as like a follower. That's maybe something you could have done.
Maybe so. I kind of want her to go up against a human foe like a Stryker or a Trask. Like, it would have been cool if somehow she and Stryker had gotten a scene together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would have been cool.
I guess is what I really want.
Yeah.
But it's cool having Nightcrawler be, if not the voice of reason, the voice of compassion for her.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be nice if all that was drawn out a little bit more to the fore. It's also really interesting that she has a deleted scene where she makes the argument that I always make. It's interesting. I talked about this just last night on the Captain Logan show. She makes the argument right at the beginning at the museum to a kid, I forget who, that mutants are actually humans just with an extra gene that gives them powers, and they're not a different species. She actually straight up says, we're still human, which is interesting to have the X-Man that is most, you know, for lack of a better word, like bigoted or afraid of humans to say. I just think that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if I wish it was in the movie because of that. I don't know if it's a contradiction or if it makes her more complex.
Well, it could just be, you know, we are the same species, but this group of people doesn't agree with that, so I have distrust of them.
Yeah. And that would make her a really good midpoint between Xavier and Magneto too, right? Where it's like, I want what Xavier wants. I don't want what Magneto wants, but I don't believe what Xavier wants is necessarily possible. Mm-hmm. I'm working toward it because I don't know what else I'm gonna do. But I don't know if I buy it. I don't know if it's possible. She's cynical before she's hateful.
Yeah, well, it's that thing, right, where it's this group oppresses me, so I take issue with that. But like, I understand that we are the same, species.
One of the worst effects in the movie is the fire that hits the cars. We kind of talked over that. Some of that does not look great.
Well, in the part where it hits the people, I think just looks really funny. That is, I think, the opposite of Wolverine killing everybody, because it feels like really tame and like weird for people getting hit by giant fireballs that are instead just kind of thrown backwards.
Especially as rough as it's allowed to go.
Yeah. Like, this guy gets up and he's got like the cartoony like black soot on his face, like he was in a
oh my god, that's great
Coyote cartoon.
That's not what you'd have 3rd-degree burns.
Yeah, no, that guy should have gotten up and he's Two-Face from the '90s Spider-Man and X-Men crossover.
That's such a good point. And it's kind of heart-wrenching watching the family looking down at them, because the sense you get is they haven't learned anything from this, and they're probably going to be, even more estranged from their kid. Mm-hmm. Like, with the mother hugging the son from behind, I'm imagining her saying something like, "You did the right thing, son."
Yeah, no, that is we're looking down on them and going, oh my god, look how dangerous these people are.
Well, and isn't it interesting that if his parents had found out earlier, before he went to the school, Bobby could have potentially become something closer to what Pyro is going to be. Mm-hmm. Because Pyro, we talked over it, but he comes in, really nice visual storytelling, by the way. We don't know very much about his background. We kind of get everything we need just from the way he looks at the family photos. Yeah. He didn't have that background. He wasn't loved, or he wasn't appreciated, or he was estranged from his family, probably because of his mutant ability. And
that's why he's got that kind of like punk attitude.
Yeah, and Bobby was able to keep it a secret. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think they've got to be thinking about this when they put this together. And you think about the year that this comes out, they give Pyro like all the hallmarks of like a school shooter or something.
Yeah, sure.
I think absolutely. That's all intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to go to that dark of a place, but I think they're thinking that, right? I mean, this is this comes out 3.5, 4 years after Columbine.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I'm already, I was making connections earlier with 9/11, and that's 2 years after.
Yeah. And
this is very much baked in its time, so definitely.
Let me read some more super chats. Thank you guys for the support. Sorry, appreciate it. Sorry, did you have a thing?
No, it's okay.
Well, we want to hear your thing, man.
Well, it was maybe a little too dark, so we can go to what you were gonna say.
Burned in 999 super chat. The X-Men movie franchise is the most wildly inconsistent franchise ever. Agreed. You got great movies, yes. Good movies, masterpieces, and complete garbage. Also, hello, Austin.
Oh, hello. I like that he put that into his super chat. That's funny.
He did. What a guy.
He just really wanted to say hi to me specifically, not you though, Kat.
I would have think those 2 words are what got him to a $10 super chat. This is all thrilling. I think the tornadoes might be a little overkill, but I don't care.
Yeah,
That
It's
there's
one of those
so
things
many
where
of them?
we completely lose the realism. There's like 18 like trillion tornadoes.
My son had a question about this. How do Storm's powers work? Can she billow air up underneath something and almost like telekinesis, like really meticulously guide it and drop it, or can she just make weather happen and hope for the best? Because I feel like we're pretty inconsistent with her powers in every X-Men thing ever, right? Like
when she's got a power set that is godlike and is easy to write yourself out of any situation.
yes.
So you have that thing where you're just going to have to nerf her in moments. Like there's kind of no way around that. But yeah, I think the assumption is that she can move air around certain objects.
Oh, Dagan Spear said I was right earlier in that girl's name was Siren.
Okay.
The siren sounding girl is actually named Siren, but it's spelled with a Y.
Her X-Men name should be like annoying B word, but Siren also works, I guess.
Yeah, it's a little bit more gracious or sorry, graceful than megaphone.
Yeah, that's what Wolverine would have said in the first movie if he met her in that first scene when he's like, "What are you called, wheels?"
When I was a kid, and you could say this about a lot of other X-Men powers, but I knew about the major ones when I was a kid watching the TV show, and I always thought Storm was the most far-fetched because I was like, how do genetics let you do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
How do genetics make hail happen? Burn in Fortnite.
Well, that's why I kind of like
from the sky.
That's why I like the portrayal they have, at least the voice actress for the '90s show, where she plays it like she's Gandalf.
Oh yeah, she plays it like she's conjuring spells. It's awesome.
Yeah. No, if anything, it makes me want to see Ian McKellen play Storm.
No, she's like Gaia in Captain Planet.
Mm-hmm.
Burned in 49 Super Chat. Happy to be able to be here while it's live. By the way, yeah, thanks, man. X-Men 2 is still a great movie. It's still quite a sophisticated movie in its genre. Relatively, I agree. There's a couple places where the seams are showing for me more than they used to, and some of that is probably because I can't unsee what I've seen, and we've just had a lot more sophisticated superhero movies since this, of course. It's the reason that certain things like Spider-Man 2 don't hold up for me as like brilliant, great movies like they did when we first saw them. But this one holds together better than some things like that.
Oh, 100%.
I just have big questions and issues with the very end with the Phoenix Force because for the reasons I talked about earlier, I don't think it was very well thought out because they didn't even have a script when they started doing it.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it's definitely easy to look at a movie like this and go, well, I wish we had, some of this in modern superhero movies.
So I didn't know this. When Magneto says, when will these people learn to fly? According to David Hayter, apparently they put that in as a nod to the fact that people complained with the first movie that it's X-Men and nobody is flying.
Oh, weird. Well,
which is a complaint I don't remember people having.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is strange. Well, I don't know if you know, too, they also changed that line. That wasn't what the first take of it was.
Oh, is that right? What was it?
He originally went, "Where did you learn to fly?"
Did you see what I did there? I pretended like I didn't know it was going to be a joke. But I, in fact, did know it was going to be a joke.
You were a good straight man. Which is why you don't work as an X-Men metaphor.
So it's interesting, even though my name is Logan. Isn't it interesting that Magneto had time to go get his outfit?
Well, I mean, yeah.
He'll kill us all.
Mystique shapeshifted into him and then took off her clothes and then shapeshifted back, and then he had that outfit.
I don't think it works that way. I don't think she could leave pieces of herself on people, and also that's gross.
I mean, she absorbs a cell phone in the first movie, so I don't know if she can do anything really.
So I know I complain about this every time we talk about anything with this version of Mystique in it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, not feeling like you have to look like a regular person is not the same thing as not wearing clothes. And I just don't get why when it's super cold outside, you wouldn't at least shapeshift some clothes or put like some actual clothes on until you need to shapeshift.
I mean,
It's
she's
just
got
very
like,
impractical. Like everybody is like they got a fire going. It's cold. You can see their breath when they're breathing. It's 20 degrees outside. Why aren't you wearing clothes?
So what you're saying is that even if she was a normal person right now, she'd still be blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Mystique only looks like this because it looks cool. Like that's the only
And
thought.
she's the sex symbol in the thing, and they're doing that instead of a catsuit. I mean, that's why they have that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a really impressive makeup job. It looks cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's weird because...
And yeah, it's sexy and it brought people to the theater. I mean, it definitely did something for these movies.
Yeah. And the makeup's not going to look cool by like the last at least 3 or like 2 of the prequel movies.
No, that's true. But yeah, I always complain about this real hard in First Class because you have that whole thing with the with the what is it Magneto brings up like leopards or something.
It's the leopard thing.
Yeah.
But I would also argue
but what I was going to say is it's already a problem here when she says when Nightcrawler says why don't you look normal all the time, she says because I shouldn't have to. But that's not the same thing as being cold for no reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but also with her powers, I mean, I guess she can shapeshift clothes. So never mind, but...
I don't know if they would actually make you warm, but I'm going to assume they will because when she shapeshifts Wolverine claws, and I don't know if she should be able to do that either, but...
Well, she absorbed a cell phone earlier on in the movie, and then that became the claws.
When she does that, they seem to be metallic. They're just not strong enough to withstand adamantium, so like maybe the clothes would make you warm?
Well, and they also hurt her when he cuts them off. So, like, that's a piece of her, I'm guessing.
Okay, I gotta ask you about this.
Yeah.
Does what Wolverine does here, and of course, people's sensibilities now are maybe a little bit different than they were in 2003. This maybe didn't play as much as, like, you know, his forcing himself on her as people would feel like it does now. But, so, forgetting all of that, all that notwithstanding, the fact that he's coming onto her really hard and trying to get her to leave her boyfriend who has been kidnapped by a madman, and he's just sort of, and he's taking advantage of her while Scott is gone, how much does that hurt this character for you? Like, is it throwing him too far under the bus? Or does it kind of work because we're playing with that is he an animal or not kind of question?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never thought of it as really hurting the character. I mean, I like that he's flawed.
Yeah,
I don't know. I've never really thought of it as.
But
like
isn't it worse than you think it is until you start talking about it?
I mean, I'm also a big Bond fan, and Bond like practically rapes women in some of the earlier movies. So,
yeah,
like,
but
it's I mean.
But what I'm saying is kind of awful about it is what he's doing to Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's not on an even playing field at all with her boyfriend right now.
Yeah, but I mean Scott's a jerk, so like
Scott is a jerk. He does kind of suck.
If anything, Wolverine should be coming to her and being like, "Hey babe, your boyfriend's kidnapped. He's probably dead."
I like Marsters in the role. They just never give him anything to do, and too many of his scenes are just, Wolverine, you suck. I hate you because you like my girlfriend. It's like, yeah, look at her. Everybody's gonna like your girlfriend, dude.
And he got typecasted as the guy that gets like cucked by the main character.
Oh my god, that's true. But like,
I'm shocked that hasn't happened in Sonic yet. Like honestly, because that's just his role. You
know, just trust your girlfriend, dude.
Yeah. No, in the third movie, his girlfriend will leave him for Tails.
If you think he's actually, you know, mass enough competition, I mean, you're serious enough that, like, you're living together. You know, you're in the same room. Okay, so, I find this scene a little awkward, and especially knowing that this isn't how it was supposed to go initially, where it seems to be just sort of a... like obligatory sexy kind of weird creepy thing. I don't totally get why she's doing this. She's just messing with Wolverine.
Well, she just is pissed with him because he stabbed her.
Yeah, is that all it is?
Yeah,
So she's
that's
just
what I think.
so she's just kind of
She's
bullying
getting a little
him.
payback.
But when she turns into Stryker at the end of it, it seems like that's kind of to bring us back to his motivations and what's going on with his character arc that's not really fueled by a character place from her perspective.
I mean, I think it just kind of plays into that, like she's really messing with him at that point when she turns into Stryker. If anything, she should have gone all the way and then turned into Stryker, like midway through.
So originally, it was actually, this is the way Hader wrote it. Originally, Wolverine, knowing that she is Mystique, but her the whole time pretending to be Jean Grey, they actually sleep together.
Oh, okay.
That was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like that better than what they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is it something he would do? Maybe.
Well, it's weird if he knows that it's her.
Yeah, it's kind of messed up.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they played it, the way Hader was talking about it was like they've got this like one night to enjoy themselves and have a reprieve, and everything is kind of dire right now. So like let him have that. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Luckily, it's not actually in the movie, so I don't have to think or talk about it too much. But
yeah.
Oh, have we already gotten? Is that what they say?
Yes.
That what they say? They say you're the bad guy.
Is that what they say?
I love the look he gives to Mystique, where it's like, this is a routine thing they've done many times in bringing people into their brotherhood.
Oh yeah.
I love the shadow work on Stryker's face in that shot.
No, it's really cool. I like that he's just watching kids getting zapped.
I do have. Well, what I wonder is if the thing he's doing on the computer isn't him doing. I guess they're just getting zapped by guards, but the way it's edited, it almost looks like he's doing something to them.
I mean, if I were Stryker, I would sit at a computer and zap kids all day. That'd be funny.
Oh my god. I do have a slight reservation in that last scene we were just talking about Magneto and Mystique. Mystique not so much, but Magneto kind of laughing at Rogue because the way like I love what you've done with your hair and all that.
Yeah.
Where they use her as the power source for their machine at the end of the first movie to turn everybody into mutants. Mm-hmm. He seems genuinely kind of sad that he has to do that. Where like in that movie, where it's a necessary evil, he wishes he didn't have to go that far. He's pretty cold about it, but you've got like one or two moments where he's like, "This is just what I have to do. I'm sorry about it."
Yeah, it's the I got to do what's necessary.
I don't know if I buy him bullying her. Like, that's kind of cartoonish villain, and he's not that guy.
Well, it makes it funnier because Mystique is like laughing next to him, like she's the henchman of a bully.
Yeah, this got me in the theater.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know why, because...
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier today when I was rewatching it, where I was like, I feel like I've always heard people say that like this surprised them, but the scene before it is, hey, I'm gonna go. No, you're not. Mystique's gonna go.
No, they set it up, but somehow it got me. And
because I kind of wondered if they maybe shouldn't have had that, and they should have had it be a surprise.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm dumb because it worked anyway, but... What I really like about this is you have this kind of fun turnabout thing where she pretended to be Wolverine in the first movie, fought Wolverine, lost that fight. Now she's going to be Wolverine in a sort of similar situation in another, like, you know, dark, dour kind of environment. And then she's going to go against this other guy that has wronged her. Certainly in...
What's the way to do sequelitis
in a worse way than Wolverine? But I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way to do sequelitis, right? Where there's just certain trappings of the thing you're working with that are going to come up,
Yeah.
and you can kind of subvert them and change them when you're doing sequels.
Like I like the finger because it's actually like about their relationship earlier in the movie.
I also like the middle finger thing because it's like
It's not just you're the bad guy. Like he kidnapped her boss and maybe her lover and
yeah, but it's also the most 2000s thing ever, which is also why I like it.
no, it is. It was her idea too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was not scripted. She came up with that.
I mean, it's a fun image.
No, it works. It seems like the obvious kind of obligatory thing to do, but I like that it's about it means something.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
to
definitely.
them. If you've been watching the movie, you get why she did that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's cool.
No, it is really cool.
The you
Once
have no
again,
idea
Rebecca
thing.
Romaine is just undervalued, is what we're saying.
I kind of the more I've seen this movie, and of course I've seen this a lot. I kind of like. I think I was a little bit weirded out by it in the theater, the sexual innuendo thing when he's like, "You have no idea," but I like the weirdness of like using your imagination with that because she's a shapeshifter. He could be talking about anything at all.
Yeah, well, I like that it's she slipped in. Oh, you have no idea. But I mean, if I were dating Mystique, I'd be like, turn into Peter Griffin. It's
Oh my god.
anyways.
Well, and like I don't know. I wouldn't always go here, but I had this thought this time, so I'm gonna mention it. But like obviously, just because an actor has a particular like sexual orientation doesn't mean that you'd expect the character to. But I think I would have this thought regardless of Ian McKellen's very very public sexual orientation. Magneto could be gay.
No, I agree 100%.
Like Mystique could be turning into a man. And
Magneto
when
is
he
one
says
of
you have
those
no idea,
characters-
again, he could be talking about anything.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's a
Magneto's one of those
horrible, if
characters
that's a
where I
crazy thing to
don't
bring up, but
consider-
I had that thought.
Yeah. No, the sexual orientation of Magneto doesn't really matter. It could go either way, or both ways.
And there's that too.
Yeah. I mean, he's with Mystique, so literally.
That's true. She could be switching back and forth.
As long as she's not like turning into Professor X, it's all okay.
That's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
Maybe she's turning into Stryker.
Maybe she knew she could do the claw thing because she's tried it before. Anyways, let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. I love the set and the monitor setup there looks really cool, and I think it's
like
really
89 Batcave. This computer.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting that we get down here and there's still like 45 minutes left in the movie and we never leave this location and I never get bored. Like it shouldn't work, but there's sort of a time vortex you get sucked into in this movie where it's like, are we even technically in the third act yet? Like it feels like it. I guess we are, but I think it's acts that aren't broken up evenly. Where like I think you have a first act that is much shorter than your second and third, or maybe your second act is a lot shorter than your first. I'm not totally sure.
No, I definitely feel like the third act in this movie is longer than the first two.
But it works.
Absolutely. No, I like that we're here for a while and that there's different things happening. And more than the first one, we're playing with other characters a little bit more.
It feels like a GoldenEye 007 arena.
Oh, absolutely. Well, especially because we got Jean and Nightcrawler.
And I like how dank and dour it is because what we're dealing with thematically. But it also never gets too relentless. Like it still feels like a fun, light enough popcorn superhero movie. I think it's one of the combo movies that best strikes that balance. Where like it's about something and it can go to really dark places, but it's still a blockbuster. It never loses the blockbusterness, except for the couple of places that you think look too TV.
Yeah, definitely.
But don't you think, as minimal as it is, don't you think all this stuff in this bunker feels like an event?
No, I mean that's what I love about this movie is that it's so small, but it doesn't feel that way.
So I don't think this was intentional in any way, but I just have to bring it up because it's interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
Jason has two eyes of different colors, just like the girl at the beginning of First Class.
Okay, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yep. Yeah,
I
'cause
can't
that's the
remember
whole
the
thing where
name
he's
of the
explaining the mutation.
of the
And he's like, it's a
a
groovy
groovy
mutation, mate,
mutation. Isn't it kind of weird that this guy has that?
Yeah. I mean, maybe that girl in his dream is that girl from the bar. I don't know.
There's a deleted scene, and I think it's probably for the best that it was taken out.
Mhm.
But there's a couple of deleted scenes actually that show Professor X thinking that he's gotten out of this mind link with Jason and out of this alternate universe that he creates in his brain, and
Yeah.
that they go back to the X mansion and it's empty and there's nobody there, and it's like connective tissue. It's this transition that gets him to the X mansion in his mind. The way the movie plays is he just kind of winds up there, which is fine because it's all in his head.
Well, I like that we're also showing that it's not like, oh, he just wakes up here and then boom. Like, they're clearly cycling through. Like, he'll realize that something's wrong, and
Yeah,
then the simulation starts over. It makes you wonder how many times they've gone through the cycle.
yeah, that's a good point. But they took it out because it confused test audiences.
Yeah.
They thought that he actually was at the mansion, which is kind of understandable, really. Like they
Yeah, I
thought
was
that
just
he
thinking
kept
that
coming
too.
in and out of reality,
Mhm.
and it was more of like a holodeck within a holodeck kind of thing.
Yeah, I can understand that.
The main reason it was there was just to give Marston more to do.
Oh, okay.
Because what happens is he thinks he's broken out of it, and then he goes and rescues Cyclops, and then he and Cyclops go to the empty X mansion,
hmm
and then
I mean, I
Cyclops
guess that is
disappears because he's
unfortunate they couldn't replace it with something else for him to do.
yeah, because it wasn't the character actually doing anything. So like,
Yeah.
who cares? But I guess they just thought, well, we haven't seen Cyclops in a while. We need to see him, even if it's not him.
Yeah.
It's probably for the best that was taken out. Tom has a $5 super chat. He says, "My understanding is it was supposed to be. This was a while back, so I'm not sure what he's talking about. A scene of Scott getting his powers, similar to a scene in Apocalypse, to have another instance of power manifest. Does he mean like a flashback or something? Oh, he's talking about with the bathroom scene, probably.
Oh, okay. Oh, so we would just see like that scene where Cyclops gets his powers. Okay. If that's the
Yeah,
case.
I think.
Well, I
That's what
mean,
he's
yeah,
talking
we
about.
definitely didn't need that.
Nope. But now that he says that, I remember hearing something about that. Robert Wild, $2 super chat. The X-Men uniforms in this one hold up to me. I agree. I don't know if you have that, but I like them.
I'm indifferent. I don't know. I'm used to them at this point.
You just didn't ever want them to be just black leather, right?
Well, I mean, this is also my first experience with X-Men, so
Oh,
it's not like
okay.
I came in, not this movie, but the first one.
Yeah.
So it's not like I came into these like, oh, they're not wearing the yellow spandex.
Well, yeah, but do you have it retroactively?
Not necessarily, because this is what I started with, so I'm like, I'm just used to them wearing this. Like, I don't really like these costumes. They're very 2000s, but that's not because I would need them to be the comic costumes.
Okay.
It's more so, it's just, I don't know, they're just wearing leather costumes. They're like a little boring, but they're okay.
Some of this stuff is, I don't know, it's weird. We'll talk about this more with Daredevil, because there's a lot of stuff in that movie that feels dated to me now in a way that it didn't used to. But for some reason, I don't have that with these, and I can't really explain it. Like, what I want to say is I was already an adult at that point, and they didn't feel silly then, so this just doesn't feel like 20 years ago to me. It feels like, a couple of years ago. So, sort of. So, it's not, like, crazy dated to me, because it's easy for me to put myself back in the time and place. But then, with other movies, I do have that. So, I can't really explain that.
Hmm.
I also
I'm just
love
glad,
that reaction.
with something like Spider-Man, we could just make a Spider-Man costume. Like it.
Yeah.
I'm glad with
Yeah.
with that, because
Well-
we're gonna get there with a Daredevil, but
But I sympathize with them with this movie in not wanting to do a bunch of bright costumes with the take that Singer went with it.
Mhm.
And like I said earlier, it's kind of surprising that we got as comic books we did, considering that they gave it to a guy that wasn't a comic fan in the first place.
it almost makes me wish they just wore something different and they weren't uniforms, because it's like, look how, like, we're all our own person.
It's
Maybe,
almost
I don't know.
like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, where it's like, we're not going to have traditional comic book superhero costumes, but we do want to sell toys.
Mhm.
So like it's got to be toyetic in some way. They have to actually be superhero costumes.
Mhm.
Maybe it's just a nostalgia thing for me
Well,
because I
it's going to be similar to when we eventually get to the Nolan Batman movies, because that's very like it's too silly for him to have a bat suit, so we're gonna have to over design it.
yeah. But when you say like can't we just have a Spider-Man costume? X-Men's a little bit different because they all have totally different looking suits, and
Well, I just
it's
mean
maybe
that specifically, like
no, I
it's
know, but let me get through this thought. It's maybe sillier putting them all together side by side in live action. Like I
yeah,
can see why you'd be worried about that. And B, they all have lots of different iterations of them. So there is the question of which one to put on screen, and you wouldn't have that with Spider-Man.
no, absolutely. No, I mean Spider-Man's a whole different bag. I just mean I'm glad that it didn't feel the need to do like what Daredevil does with the costume.
So I have a question. How
Yeah.
do you get adamantium liquid in the first place? He's like, if you figure out how to do it, you got to keep it that way. I'm like, how did you do it in the first place?
They found a mutant whose only power was that he could make adamantium liquid,
Well, that's
and
a
then somebody
very
accidentally killed
specific
him.
power. Yeah, I guess you could have like. That's a good point. Maybe he did it with a mutant because you could have like a transmuting kind of power where you could turn a substance into a different kind of substance.
Mhm. Yeah, like Molecule Man.
Cox is a pro at delivering exposition. So much of his dialogue is just explaining stuff, and
Well,
it's
and I mean, the best thing about our trinity of characters in this is that they're all kings of delivering exposition with
yeah.
Cox, Stewart, and
Well,
McKellen.
and that's why I was going to say I think it was really smart for Cox to go with a Southern accent because A, he has to be American through and through with his background with the Vietnam and all of that. That also makes me wonder how much of a like prejudiced kind of bigoted guy he was in the first place because maybe he liked the unjust war in Vietnam. Uh, but also like the other two characters in that triad have British accents. And I think you need that contrast. I think if he came in here with his regular Scottish accent,
Yeah, but then he'd just be walking around like Groundskeeper Willie, and that would be embarrassing.
it is kind of weird. It is kind of weird that Deathstrike is wearing what almost looks like another X-Men
I
costume.
was just thinking that, except it's like cut lower.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
she's
that's just one of those aspects of
look,
this is
she's another
so
sexy hot chick.
2000.
You gotta show a little skin in 2003. She's not gonna be naked with just blue all over her. We've done that already.
Should have been naked with just adamantium all over.
Oh man, she looked like Dural from Virtua Fighter.
Yeah, like Jocasta or something. Be awesome.
Yeah, I'm just imagining that because Dural is actually female, so it'd be exactly that. That's what it would look like. The reveal that she has the same power Wolverine does and has big long claws is legitimately cool in the theater.
Yeah. Oh, and it's one of Jackman's best line deliveries in this movie, I think. At least comedically, like that, like holy.
Yeah,
Moment.
that's great. No, I'm with you.
Jackman's like the king of delivering the S word because that's also one of his best line deliveries in Days of Future Past when Magneto has his big rant and then Wolverine's like, "You gonna clean all this up?"
I'm actually much more surprised they got away with everything that's in this fight than all the hallway stuff earlier.
Oh, 100%. This stuff
Because
is genuinely messed up.
it's messed up. And it's wonderful and it's exactly what it should be. But man, it bugged me a little bit in the theater, like in all the right ways.
Although the
And it
clunk
feels a
when she
little
hits the
tamer
pool-
now, just because I think we're all kind of desensitized to a lot of stuff at this point. But that was pretty darn edgy
Boy, it's all
in
the like it
03.
bleeding out of her eyes and nose and stuff. That's what makes it.
Oh
messed
yeah,
up.
absolutely.
But the clunk when she hits the bottom of the pool is a little funny.
Yeah. Well, some of that kind of got me though, particularly like when he's got her in the tank, and he's or maybe she stabs him real hard and the blood drips to the bottom. Like
Oh, it's when she's stabbing him and there's like all the blood pooling in
it's
the water below.
it's real brutal. Bob the Hun says that line is why they drop the F-bomb in later films.
Oh.
I didn't know that. If that's true.
Also, Wolverine kind of sucks in these movies. Like, he gets his ass kicked in every movie.
He's like Worf in the first couple seasons of TNG. Oh, I shouldn't say the first couple seasons.
Just all of TNG.
Just all of it, yeah. Go back and watch Ethics. It's hilarious.
And he always brutalizes women in each movie. That's another thing that always happens.
Yeah, and you always bring that up, and it's a thing I have to be reminded of. I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. Like, I always have to think about it for a second.
Well, it's something I never really thought of until watching Marvel Mania. It's something Eric brings up where he's like, I don't really have an issue with this, but it is weird when you think about it. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. That is kind of weird.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Especially because he only ever really gets to take out one villain per movie, and it's always the female one. I don't know, it's
but you could argue that that's just because X-Men is a real diverse property in the first place, and a lot of their best characters and some of their evil characters are women. So, like, what are you going to do?
Well, and part of it, I think, is because he gets to be the one that takes out Mystique in the first movie instead of Sabretooth.
Fella says, I don't think that's a conscious decision. I don't think it is either. Well, maybe he's talking about the F-bomb thing, but if he's talking about the
if he's talking about the female thing,
Wolverine's always killing chicks. I don't think that's on purpose either. But
yeah, that's not even like an issue or anything. It's just like a funny thing you pick up on.
Yeah, it's just interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, would you explain something that you said to me earlier off camera that I still don't quite understand?
About what?
You said everybody in these movies is horny. I don't know what you're talking about when you say that. What does that mean? No, you said that though.
No. What? You said.
I was like, everybody's trying to get laid in the X-Men movies. I don't know what you're talking about.
No. You said a thing about Storm.
Yeah.
It was the Storm thing. You were like.
And then you said that about her, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. You said, well, everybody is, and I was like, what do you mean?
No, I think you misunderstood a joke.
Oh, okay, sorry. I didn't mean to bring up a thing you didn't want to talk about, but
no, I'm just trying to think of what it was exactly. But it was like Storm. Storm is kind of prejudiced against humans, but is okay with the idea of humans reproducing or whatever, like the species thing that you said earlier. And I just said, yeah, I mean, she doesn't like humans ultimately, but she's just really horny.
Oh, I don't remember it having anything to do with procreation, though. I don't know. I don't remember what point I was making.
Yeah, I don't. Well, because you brought up the whole species thing about how you can mate with humans and mutants, and I just said,
"Oh,
it's because she's horny," and you were like, "Oh yeah," and I was like, "Yeah, I mean everyone."
Okay,
is.
That whole thing was lost on me. I'm sorry. We should move on. I love the minimalism of this, where we still stay in this location. But this is a global problem. Like, all the mutants are targeted. Maybe every mutant in the world is going to get killed by Xavier.
I do have one thought, though.
Which is also kind of interesting when you then get to Logan and you think about how he almost accidentally did it there, too. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
I do have one thought, though, which is, do you think that we should check up on the kids from the school?
More often?
No, just like in general, because they kind of just leave the movie and are never brought up again.
Well, they go rescue them.
No, the ones that escaped, like Colossus and them.
Oh.
Like, could we maybe have cut back to, like, those kids? Like, there's almost like a little side adventure.
Can I be honest with you? I didn't think anybody escaped. I thought they got them all.
No, Colossus and them escaped.
I never think about that. Yeah, what are they doing? They're just having pizza down the street. It's not needed.
There's almost like another X-Men film happening outside of this, which is kind of fun.
This is the other big grand... They should have made a video game. This is the other big grand moment for Magneto that is wonderful, and I've never understood it narratively, but I guess I don't really care that much. But, like, how does Magneto know where exactly the plates would have to go, and, like, the panels? Well, okay... I get that, but, like, I've talked about this before, but the original Cerebro has panels
around all of it.
So it's really just a cool visual cue, right? Like, it doesn't really mean anything, because it's not like It's not like Xavier needs half the panels to be in certain places so that he can look for mutants when he uses Cerebro.
Mm-hmm.
So
But
like,
if you want to play with that idea that they have to be in the right spot, it just means that in his version of Cerebro, it's only using those panel placements to find like what he's looking for, and that's why you don't have to switch them because they're everywhere.
okay. But would it also mean that you have to be Magneto to use it?
No,
So are you just saying that there would be some kind of like way in the device for the panels to move around themselves or something?
no, because they wouldn't have to move. There's
Okay.
panels around the entire thing. It would
Okay.
be like
I guess I kind of get what you're saying.
it would be like, let's say you have a like a bunch of lights, and you could turn on some of them, but not all of them, but they are all still there. It would be like that, I would imagine.
So
But it is just there to look cool.
it's really sad that Origins takes everything from this scene and either ignores it or plays it in the stupidest, most prequelitis possible way. But I love using my imagination to guess at what Wolverine was supposed to be like back then, according to these movies. It's like he volunteered for the procedure, and also unreliable narrator. You have no idea how much Stryker is making up and what actually happened. But I want to think that a lot of it is true, but maybe he's leaving some stuff out. Like there was some reason that he volunteered for the procedure. I hope it's more interesting than the really convoluted thing with his girlfriend and Stryker manipulating him in Origins. I hope it's not that. And the idea that he was, kind of a bad guy.
Mm-hmm. Really, they should special edition this movie and have him say, "Cuckoo Kachu got screwed." Remember that, Logan?
And I just like him as kind of the devil here, where he's tempting Wolverine with the knowledge that he wants, while at the same time really belittling him. You're just an animal, but I can tell you everything you want to know about your past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely.
And he'll just say anything he has to try to save himself. And then, okay, so I am watching the disc with the subtitles that says exits. It does say it. There are no exits that way, Wolverine.
I mean, he's not wrong because it's an entrance.
Yeah, no, you're going the wrong way, buddy. That's not where you go. And I get from Cox's performance anyway, it feels like Stryker has a almost like owner pet sort of affection for Wolverine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like even just that little moment when he sees Mystique Wolverine and he's like, "Yeah, that's not Wolverine.
I know my own work."
I know my own work. Yeah,
he sees Wolverine as art.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, especially
Yeah.
because Wolverine is a professor of art.
They should have brought that back instead of the history thing.
This is one of the best bits. Sorry, this is one of the best bits in the score.
Oh, okay, yeah.
With the so I'm a huge fan of the soundtrack. I've listened to it a great deal apart from the film.
Yeah.
And I just love the dissonant choir stuff there.
It's almost like Dracula-y. Like it's going to that kind of a place, just the piano.
Okay, maybe you're right about the president not looking
right.
Like he's
he looks
he's
like
hurt
he's
enough.
high.
Yeah. Yeah, I
He's
never
just
had
like,
that before. And you sent me a message today about that, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. He always seemed in pain to me, but there he just seems confused.
He's like, oh man,
Oh, somebody's trying to kill me
I'm the president.
again, but in my mind, or maybe I've just had too many edibles.
Exactly.
I love the lighting
like the moment I knew what drugs were, I was like, that president is on drugs. He's not being killed.
The lighting on Nightcrawler's face here is really good.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you know what? There's a connection between these two movies, besides the obvious that they're both Marvel and they both come out in '03, and you think they both have too much TV-ness about them, or at least this one. So they both have a Catholic character with a lot of Catholic guilt.
Yeah, that is true. That is absolutely true.
Okay, why does Jason make himself in Xavier's mind and to these guys look like a little girl?
I assume with them
Go.
it's a sympathy. Oh, I guess for Professor X too, it's a sympathy thing where you're going to be more like, oh, it's a little girl. Like I'm gonna have more sympathy towards them and not come in attacking.
Well, with
That's my assumption.
Xavier, he's trying to like create this reality where there's this girl that is lost and needs his help, and so he's not going to come as himself. But I
Yeah.
just think it's an interesting choice that it's like specifically like a little 9-year-old girl or something.
Mhm.
I think it's also probably just as superficial as like little girls in horror movies are creepy.
I mean, yeah, I think there's definitely that too. But I also think in terms of why you would use her, it's like an innocence thing, right? Where
Absolutely.
you're like, oh, this little girl, I gotta help her.
And that's his job after all.
Yeah,
You've
exactly.
you've got Magneto. You've got Mystique back in a helicopter,
Hmm.
like in the first movie.
Yep.
Oh, hey, I have a question about this. Is overthinking stuff. It's fine. It's a comic movie. I don't have a problem with it.
That's
But
okay.
I'm,
That's our dynamic.
I'm gonna ask it anyway because it's amusing to me. When she is pretending to be Senator Kelly,
Hmm.
how does she replicate his credentials? She's got to get into the White House. She's got to have a
Oh, like his
driver's
ID and stuff.
license.
I mean, they kidnapped him. She might just have that from when they kidnapped him. Like he might have had that on him
I guess it's possible.
because they kidnapped him like at an official thing. That
Yeah,
would be my
that's
assumption.
no, that's true, and he's not going to have those things on him when he turns into a puddle.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he's naked when he falls out of the thing, isn't he?
Yeah. No, I think he is.
That's the big shot when he walks up on the beach.
Yeah, that's true. Fellow 49 super chat. Try to keep the super chats related to the movies when we do these commentaries, if you would. But he says, I've been reading some Silver Age Batman recently. Have you guys considered covering that material? Yeah, I've done a tiny bit, but yeah, certainly.
I want to show you
At some
the
point,
one
I'd like
issue
to.
where they get a guy to paint Batman. It's like I'm gonna draw what I think Batman looks like under his mask just by what I'm looking at, and then he draws a bald man, and then Batman takes his mask off and he's that bald man, and it's one of like
What?
it's one of the most like just strangest things I've ever seen.
What?
Yeah,
I can't wait.
and then later on, they're like, "Oh, Batman put on this disguise under his mask to fool them."
Doesn't it feel like there should be 8 minutes left in this movie? We're still 20 minutes away.
Hmm. There's going to be more of an epilogue, and then obviously we have the big sacrifice stuff.
Yeah.
But it
Well,
does
yeah,
feel like
Spock hasn't sacrificed himself for the Enterprise yet.
Yeah. No, I mean we've already taken out the bad guy.
Speaking of, there are some music cues here and there that remind me a little bit of Wrath of Khan.
Hmm.
I don't know how much of that is intentional, but
I mean, it's
Singer is apparently a huge Star Trek fan, which I did not remember.
Which also means that he should never be allowed to make a Star Trek movie, which obviously he wouldn't now.
I don't think he's going to be allowed to make much of anything.
Yeah,
At this
but
point.
you know what I mean. Like if he made it here, it would have been a no.
Yeah, I mean we've left that elephant because I don't want to have to talk about that every single time we bring up something that people that got Me Too'd worked on. But I will say that I'm speaking with affection about to some degree, because I really like the man's work, about the guy it feels like he was back then. Because once you get to stuff like Apocalypse, he sounds like a crazy person on those commentaries.
Yeah, and I mean, I have that with Days of Future Past to an extent, even though I like that movie. But I also feel like a lot of my goodwill towards that movie probably comes from Vaughn, because he does the first like initial draft of it.
Comes from what?
Matthew Vaughn, because he does the first
course.
draft of that.
No, it's hard not to think that the majority of the best ideas in that didn't come from Vaughn.
Hmm. Yeah, that's how I feel.
And you just got to wonder, you know, how far Gunslinger was at that point
And there's a lot of just repeating things. Like I
creatively.
haven't really talked about it in this one because we'll talk about it more when we do that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of just like, remember this scene from X2? Here's our equivalent, and like I don't really need that.
No, I agree, but some of it is kind of cleverly done, and I was kind of hoodwinked by it a little bit because I did miss that, and it felt like a reunion movie, and it was almost to the year 10 years, and you know.
Yeah. When I just think of stuff like we had that bathroom scene with Mystique and we redo it there and it's nowhere near as cool as it is here. I don't know, there's just stuff like that. But anyways.
And then they bring back the music sting for Stryker, but he seems like a totally different character, and
Yeah.
he's not interesting, and we don't do anything with him.
And yeah, it would have been cool to do something with him in Vietnam, but we don't. Oh, so I was gonna mention this is like a dumb question, nitpick thing.
Absolutely.
Earlier on, I'm only saying this now because we have that kid again.
Sorry, can we get a diamond statue of exactly this?
Oh, him chained
Stryker chained up to the rock. I would buy that tomorrow.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
It'd be awesome. And then put Wolverine on the other side of it with his claws up to him. Come on now.
I guess they just holding this boy.
Give it to me. I will
Give
buy
it to
it.
me,
Anyway, I'm sorry,
baby.
good. You
And
were
all the
making a
mutants say
point.
Stryker's pretty fly for a human guy.
Oh my god. Oh my god. So, one day. Okay, never mind. This is his best performance.
Yeah, no, of course it is.
What
And
am I
this
talking
kid
about?
sticks his tongue out.
No, I'm talking about Stryker.
No, I know, but like that just elevates
I
it.
thought you meant the kid. The kid's best performance is when he's in two scenes. He sticks his tongue out both times.
Yeah, and it's the only thing in this that makes me uncomfortable with Bryan Singer. But anyways, so what I was gonna say with that earlier scene.
Well,
Just a
I
question for
thought
you.
the most uncomfortable thing you were gonna say is when Jean Grey momentarily possesses Cyclops. Because
Oh, no.
that feels a little disturbing when he's talking to Jean.
Oh, you mean when she turns into Professor X?
Or sorry, Xavier, not Cyclops. Sorry, I got too many heads in my or too many characters in my head. Are we doing a whole other movie after this?
Yeah, apparently.
That's a mistake.
I don't know. I feel no fear.
He's got
but-
no fear. Well,
but
that's
anyways,
because that's fine because we're gonna put the fear in you.
in us, yeah. So that little kid earlier on, who he sticks his tongue out and Storm's like, "Hey, not here." Does that mean that kid just walks around that museum and if anybody talks?
Sorry. Senior Sticks says he's leaving and he won't be here for super chats, which makes me think I must have skipped some of his.
Maybe it just means
did
that
I
he
miss
won't be able to
anything?
send any. Not that I noticed.
Apologies if I missed something. I don't think I did. I just don't know what he means when he says won't be here for super chats.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, here's one. $2 super chat. Phoenix unlocked her true self that's suppressed. I mean, yeah, according to X3.
That is correct.
Yeah,
According to X3. Yeah.
That's what That's what happens according to that movie. Sorry, I missed your super chat. Thanks, buddy. Sorry, if I missed another one, let me know. I'm totally gonna let you make this point now.
Yeah, so that kid, he sticks his tongue out and Storm's like, not here. Does that mean he has to just walk around and never speak to anyone if they speak to him? Because if he opens his mouth to speak, his tongue would come out. Be able to see it.
Yeah, that's true. And that means that there are like feathered children and scaly children that they just don't even take anywhere. They just leave home.
You're equal to them, but you cannot be seen.
You're not allowed to come though. We're not even gonna put you in a Raphael trench coat. I'm going to see a movie.
Magneto comes in with their building the school, and he's like, "This feathered boy will not be safe."
You will not be safe. Okay, so let me just get this out of the way because these days this is kind of turned into my big question and big kind of problem with this movie. Why does she get out of the plan?
My assumption has always just been that she needs to be able to see it to lift it up that way, and she can't do it from inside.
What about the torpedoes earlier?
What do you mean? What about the torpedoes?
Well, she was stopping stuff coming at the jet when the planes were coming at them, and I don't think she could see all of that. Or could
No, but I
she?
also think it's different if
Or
you're
was it like
inside something. But
radar
also,
and
she
stuff?
failed to do the torpedo thing.
Well, there was only one she couldn't stop because her powers just aren't there yet. But she stopped some of it, right?
Yeah, she stops one, and it takes a second. Like it takes her a minute to be able to do it. And this is like a real emergency. We need to do this right now thing.
Yeah.
But my assumption has just always been from inside the plane, she can't both hold the wave back and like lift them up.
If that's what it is, I just needed to be clearer because I can't tell. What makes it worse is that they put too fine a point on it at the end of the movie, where it almost feels like a writer who knows he's backed himself into a corner and has to come up with like some sort of an explanation because he knows the audience might not be buying it. So Cyclops says the problem is that a character in the movie asks why she leaves the plane. And he's like, why did she do that? And Xavier says, because she made a choice. And I feel like if you didn't have that, I wouldn't question him.
But also because he's just like, I don't understand why she had to do this. And Professor X is like, she made a choice. She made a choice to get out and save them. Like, I don't know.
But I would feel like the line would
what I'm
be,
saying.
but like what else was she gonna do? Like any of us would have done that if we'd had that power too. Like there was no other way out of it.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean he delivers it in a very like trailer foddery.
It's
line.
a real
Like,
ambiguous,
that's not
yeah.
a trailer fodder line, but I don't know. Like I don't think that defeats what I've always thought it was. Like I don't think it's fully going against that. Like it's a weird way to phrase it, I guess. But they're phrasing
It's
it
too
in a way
ambiguous to
sound
me.
cool.
You might be right, but I can't tell. And so
Yeah.
I've always been kind of frustrated about that.
Yeah.
And I also would much rather it be what they. I mean, it doesn't help sometimes when I know too much about the making of the film.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Because like I don't want to rewrite the movie, but like they rewrote their movie, and I think it was better the other way. I like potentially. And they're also flying by the seat of their pants because, again, they didn't come into the making of the movie knowing they were going to do that. And I think that shows a little bit. It's kind of impressive that it works as well as it does, given that, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
But I feel like if it's the suicide thing on top of it, it's better. If it's like I said this earlier, but if it's like, well, I've got to save my friends. There's maybe a way I could do it where I'll be okay, but the Phoenix is coming and it's gonna consume everyone. And I can't tell if visually that's supposed to be the point. Like she's also trying to consume the Phoenix, like she can't deal with all the power that's coming, or if the fact that the Phoenix shows up is why she's powerful enough to do it. I don't know. I don't think you know. I don't think the movie knows.
I think in order to have that reading, it just needs maybe another scene in the third act where we start to have the fire thing that she's having in that.
Yeah.
Like maybe you could have done that while she's fighting Scott.
And maybe one or two more discussions past the first one about her losing control of her powers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there just needs to be a little bit more discussion for that, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't think that like breaks the movie. Like I said, I've
No,
never
it doesn't.
had to take an issue
When
with
I say
it
it's my biggest problem, I don't mean it breaks the movie or that it's a huge problem, but I think it could be more effective.
No, and I agree with that. Like I said, like I never had that moment of really questioning it because I've always just had a read on that scene. But I agree it could be more effective, certainly.
When Xavier tells the president that this is not a threat, it still very much would feel like it's a threat if you're the president.
Yeah, I mean, at least he didn't drop a baseball diamond on him and say, "We are not threatening you."
You will not be safe. I like the choice to have the whole X team here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's just a really great way to punctuate your movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pretty smart way to get out of the political predicament with just a few minutes left in your movie.
What's also having everyone here like a nice moment, like it's not about Professor X, it's about all of us.
Like it's and I don't know.
Are important.
This could be done in way too easy of a way, but I really buy that they have that file. We know where they got it.
Mhm.
and it's clear, unequivocal proof of what Stryker's been doing,
Yeah.
and that it's a conspiracy,
Mhm.
and that his near assassination was a conspiracy, and also having Nightcrawler there is really smart.
Mhm. Yeah,
He's like,
absolutely.
we're here with the guy who tried to kill you. It's not what you thought it was.
Mhm.
Originally, this was only supposed to be like Xavier and one other person, and then they kept adding people until they decided to just bring the whole crew.
Yeah, no, and I think it's important of, like I said, that giving everyone a face, and it's, look, we're just people, except for Cyclops because he's got like a stupid thing on his face.
Well,
But he
Cyclops has got to
doesn't
be
shiv.
thinking like, I wasn't here for any of this. All I got to do was watch my girlfriend die. No, you don't say that.
I just watched my girlfriend die, and you're gonna make me go stand around while you deliver a speech to the president? Can't I go home and cry?
Robo Brando says, I never liked that they immediately went to Washington from the climax, though. Why?
Is that, well, do they? I don't think they just like flew straight to the White House from that
No,
action.
I mean, they don't show us any scenes between that, but that doesn't mean that time didn't pass. I mean, that
Unless
would
he
also
just
be
means he
really
doesn't like
convenient
that cut.
timing. Like, the president is just about to give that speech right after the dam blew. That's a little easy.
I mean, that's just one of those movie moments of they could go to him at any time. We're gonna go to him right when he's about to make an address.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been 2 weeks after that. The other thing you have to keep in mind, too, is they didn't. It had to have been later because Xavier wouldn't have had time to review the documents.
Mm-hmm. Well,
He's got to look
maybe,
through it, see what's in there.
maybe Robo Brando just means he doesn't like that we cut straight from the climax to this.
What did you need in the interim?
That I don't know. 'Cause I don't really
Does
have
he? Well, because you're not Robo Brando, I understand that. But maybe,
But maybe like another moment with Cyclops and
maybe he's
Wolverine.
wanting that to breathe
Yeah,
more. Like maybe it is kind of the Wrath of Khan thing, where like, well, the immediate thing we do after that is the funeral. Maybe it is kind of weird we don't have a funeral,
or maybe you could have ended on that president scene.
especially because X3 is going to have one of the most awkward funeral scenes ever, or like, I guess.
That's got two, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and that's what I was gonna say. Is you have the monument at the end that's really awkward, where you just have everybody that we killed off in this movie.
A funeral for everyone but Scott.
Fella 499. Oh, you didn't have to do that, but thanks, man. Make up for the last unrelated super chat. Comic book films of this era have a weightiness, so to speak, I don't quite feel anymore. This exemplifies that. Austin, how much of that has to do with the obligatory nature of superhero as a genre past a certain point, up to at least a couple of years ago?
Like, what do you mean? Like, in what sense?
I mean, the idea that we take them for granted now. This is just the big popular thing that's keeping Hollywood moving. So of course we have these movies. We don't have to try as hard to get in all the stuff we really want from a franchise because maybe we won't get to make another one. We'll talk about that real hard with Daredevil.
Possibly.
It was a novelty. It was special. It was extraordinary that you even got these things back then.
Well, I just assumed he meant, with stuff like the president and stuff, like some of that just feels more weighty. One of my big complaints is that cops don't exist in superhero movies anymore.
Yeah.
And like, there's almost like
you have them in this movie, but if they get third-degree burns, they just have soot on their face.
Yeah, but we wouldn't even have them now.
That's true.
Obviously there are exceptions, but like in most cases, we never really deal with that anymore. And
yeah, I
I
mean,
think there's something lost in that.
But I could make that argument about a lot of movies made 20, 30 years ago versus some now for like, mass audiences and big spectacle things, blockbusters.
Yeah.
Where, this movie's allowed to breathe and take its time more. But then there are lots of things that even back then that didn't have that, of course, like the theatrical cut of Daredevil.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bob the Hun, James Cameron almost made an X-Men movie in the 80s. Yep, that's true.
That is correct, yeah. And then he got talked into doing Spider-Man instead.
And then that still didn't
and
happen.
that also didn't happen.
Yep. James Cameron has a long history of not making superhero films, and he's still never made one.
We also now has a long history of not making movies because he made like Avatar like 10 years after, or more than 10 years after Titanic, and then Avatar 2 like 10 years after Avatar.
Right, right. His career for a decade was thinking about making more Avatar movies, and then now his career is making them.
Well, yeah, because Disney bought it and they were like, okay, you're actually making these now.
You have to do it.
Exactly. One thing in terms of, this stuff that we don't really do now.
Yeah.
Well, and if we do it now, it's always like you'll see like 8 billion articles before the movie is like all the Easter egg characters, which is pretty fun. Like we get Kitty Pryde and Colossus.
Well, that's a good point. You went into this if you saw it in the theater, and you wouldn't have known about any of that.
I think Colossus was all over the trailers. I don't know about
Sure, but
Kitty
the
Pryde.
Easter eggs you wouldn't have already heard about.
Yeah, I haven't had that kind of a reaction to anything until Guardians 3 with Phyla-Vell. And then I had like a really giddy moment in the theater and went, "Oh my god, this is just like an old X-Men movie." Like, I got to be surprised by this. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, you also don't try to go on radio silence for movies. Like you actively look at things, to be fair, but it is hard to avoid them.
But I can also have that reaction looking at them, though. To be fair, being like, "Oh, this character's going to be in the movie. That's cool."
Okay.
But for most of them, it's not even like I have to look.
I guess I'm not totally sure what point you're making then.
No, but what I'm saying is that most of it, it's not about me looking into things. Most of it is just they'll be like we'll announce the castings of it, like it's in like an official report.
Well, sure, but you could avoid reading that stuff.
No, I mean that is true, but like I'm just saying it's cool that we used to not do that.
Yeah, I just didn't get what your point was of having, like finally seeing a modern movie and not having that.
Hmm. No, I mean with that, it was just a cool moment of like, oh man, they put Phyla-Vell in this movie. I would have had that reaction if I just like read about like, somebody being like, oh, rumor, like maybe she'll be in it, like that's
Yeah.
cool. And I would have been like, oh man, like maybe, let's see. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there was just a freshness to this stuff where, back then there were characters that are very popular now that you never thought you'd see a movie about,
Hmm.
much
Well,
less
like
like
I said,
a reference to them in something.
there is like a background Kitty Pryde and Colossus movie happening that we don't see because we never cut back to those kids.
It's funny listening to Singer's commentary because I don't think he knows who Kitty Pryde is at this point.
Hmm. Which is funny because she's referenced in the first one and this one.
He taught. Well, yeah, but I mean, he didn't write them.
No, I know, but like that's the type of thing I wouldn't necessarily think of had to be scripted. Like it could just be like a visual, like, hey, let's just put this in.
Yeah, but
Especially for the
what I
first
mean
one.
is, I think he knows that there's a mutant that goes through walls, but I don't think he realizes that Kitty Pryde is like a major character that people
Oh,
know,
okay,
and like a lot of people's favorite X-Man. Like in the commentary, he talks about her like there's this mutant that goes through walls. Like he never names her. Like it's kind of weird.
That is weird then, yeah. I don't know. Frickin' Singer, I don't know.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I get the sense that he really warmed up to the comic book stuff a lot more with the second movie. Maybe actually cracked a couple open.
Hmm. Yeah, like maybe he actually read what is the book this one's based on? It's like God Kills.
God Loves
Man
Man Kills is one of
That's what it
them,
is.
and then
Yeah.
there's some X-Men Legacy stuff.
Yeah, I'm not too sure because X-Men's a big blind spot for me, but I just know that was where Stryker comes from, and that was one of the big ones. Maybe he knows what the Dark Phoenix is by this point.
Because I saw something about that earlier when I was doing a little bit of research. Something with Legacy in the title, but I thought the actual X-Men Legacy book was after this, so I don't actually know what that was about. But
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know.
um, We didn't really mention this, but I always thought Deathstrike kind of got the same treatment that Magneto's henchmen got in the first movie, where you got to have these like monosyllabic villains that don't get to do anything but fight because we have too many characters in the movie. I mean, one thing that dates this kind of thing a little bit is that superhero movies have, in recent years, gotten more adept at juggling a big cast.
See, I don't know if I would say it dates it in that.
It just doesn't feel like at the time you had to give movies a pass a lot. Where it's like, well, we didn't do too much with this character, but that's because we have such a big cast. And I don't feel like I give MCU movies a pass for that anymore because I've now seen the ones that have 60 characters and they all get enough to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, we had that problem so hard with Daredevil. It's got 4 and it thinks it has 45 characters.
With this and the first X-Men, like it's just the Bond thing, right? Like they're like Odd Job or Jaws or whatever, where they're just the monosyllabic henchman character that's there to fight the hero. Like it's going into that formula. So I feel like it doesn't really date it, but I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, I don't mean to split hairs. I just mean like in specifically the superhero genre. Was it when I say dating it? 20 years ago, we were always so worried about a movie having too many characters in it, and people don't really argue about that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad
we're not scared of it like we used to be, is what I'm saying. And I can see what I mean is I see some hesitation in it. In a way we wouldn't do that now. I feel like you would never have a character like Deathstrike that gets one line.
Well,
you'd never do that now.
What it is now is the like awful thing in Wonder Woman 84 where Cheetah is the like Lady Deathstrike of that movie, but she has to have like a 40-minute subplot
and she's
just scenes that waste time. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's the thing too is sometimes I think movies will underestimate the audience's patience. We have a story that really needs to be beefier and a longer runtime than maybe you want until you go sit down and watch it. And then you have other movies that get self-indulgent where they have an hour and a half worth of story, but they make you sit through it for 2.5 hours. This movie could actually have probably stood to be a little longer, even though it's a pretty meaty runtime. But if you'd taken 10 or 15 minutes and gotten if not adding a couple of mutants, I mean, I would much prefer flesh out some of the ones you have already. Depending on how you handled it, I don't know that it would mess with the pacing too much.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, even with the mutants we have here, there's characters that need more screen time. Like Storm and Cyclops and Jean.
Yeah, shockingly, Nightcrawler probably actually gets about it. I mean, I'd love to see him more.
Yeah. Well, he's one of those side characters that gets exactly enough screen time, I feel like. Where, like, I want more, but I should be left wanting more.
Well, and he really serves the story, but I also like him on his own.
Yeah. No, and he's just a fun little side character that gets his big moments and then doesn't take over.
Yeah. But, like,
he's the type of character where I would question... And, like, you could make it work, but he's the type of side character in a movie where I'm like, I don't necessarily need him to be a protagonist of something. I feel like he works better as a side character.
But, like, do you think Rogue needed a lot more to do?
That who did, sorry?
Rogue.
No, because I feel like the kids get a lot of screen time, like, more than a lot of the adults.
Yeah. I know some people had that with this. I don't really, but
really, yeah.
That's why I was asking you that. Yeah.
Maybe because Iceman kind of takes over as like the protagonist of that subplot, maybe.
Because the Iceman cometh.
Exactly. I mean, what killed the mutants, Cap?
Oh, I think it was Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think that's what it was. Hey, let's go ahead and do our ratings real quick, and then we're gonna take a 10-minute break or so, and then come back with our second movie for folks that are sticking around for that. If not, you can watch it later. It'll be a separate video, separate stream. We're gonna do tweet length reviews all with the at the end of the Daredevil video, because some of the folks that left tweet length reviews did both movies in one tweet, or in one review. So we'll just tack those all at the end of Daredevil.
Okie dokie.
Which is kind of weird because this is two different videos, but that's how we're going to handle it. So anyway, I'll do this differently next time, but I forgot about the tweet length reviews again, and I waited too late to ask for them. So next time I'll make those separate posts, and it'll work out fine. So Austin, why don't you go ahead and go first and give us a rating for the film, and then we'll go ahead and I'll do mine, and then we'll adjourn for just a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this movie a superhero. I think it's really good. There's certain things that date it, and a few things that I think could be improved on. But overall, it's a very engaging movie.
I thought I had the worst. That's exactly what I thought you would do. I thought I had like the worst viewing I'd ever had of this earlier this week. And like I was poking holes in it and stuff, and then as we were watching it this time, some of those things I was like more okay with again as we were discussing them, and a lot of the thematic meat, a lot of the ideas that have always really grabbed me with this movie were like coming back to be real hard. It's like really, it remains super entertaining, while at the same time it's thoughtful and about stuff. And suddenly, like, it felt as great as it always did to me, even though I've got some questions about that ending. I'm going back to Legend on it.
Oh, okay, cool.
I really am. I thought I was going to land at superhero, but after our conversation, I got to go back to Legend with it.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's funny, so because everybody doesn't
I'm
know
really
this,
kind of surprised I'm saying that, because I thought I was just going to complain this whole time, and it didn't come out that way.
Yeah, so earlier, I think like 2 days ago, Kat messages me and is like, "Oh man, like I am not having a good time with X2 and Daredevil, and we're gonna sit down and we're gonna talk about it, and you're gonna like completely ruin these movies for me." And I was like, I don't know about that. Like, I feel like we're gonna talk about it, and you're gonna be like, "Oh no, I do like these movies ultimately."
It'll be interesting to see how hard I end up coming down on Daredevil, but
Yeah, because I have a feeling. I mean, we're gonna see, but
yeah,
I have a feeling you're probably gonna be harsher on that movie than I am.
maybe.
Well, I
guess
feel
we'll
like we're
see.
also gonna agree on a lot of things.
Yeah, and then I'm on a high from this, so I don't know if that. I don't know if that'll hurt it or not. Maybe we shouldn't do these as double features.
Or maybe we should start with the bad ones.
Maybe it affects them too much. Yeah,
When we do that, yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, folks, thanks a bunch for watching, and stick with us if you feel like staying up and watching another superhero movie. And if not, check it out later on if you're so inclined. If you would like to support the program, go to patreon.com/geekvolution. We've got good stuff at, of course, all the different tiers, but at the $10 tier, you can become a Superhero Rewind producer, which lets you sometimes help us pick movies for the program. We're going to do that next time around. We've got and I'll reveal it in a little bit, we've got a requested review for next time, and then we're going to be right into October at that point, so we wanted to go ahead and start getting into the more like Halloween-y horror-ish things, so we threw one in there, but we'll let the patrons help us pick next time around. You can be in the Superhero Rewind Discord, and we're actually going to have a meeting tomorrow night there, so now would be a really good time to become a patron, to become a Rewind producer if you're so inclined. We're going to talk about potential ways to improve the MCU as it stands right now. Everybody's going to come in with a different idea for that, and we're going to have a discussion. We're going to do that 8 o'clock tomorrow night, and if you join Patreon at the $10 tier, you'll get a message about that. So hang out with us. We try to do that once a month, and it's on Discord. It's a video call I don't know how well I'm going to do going into another movie, but
That's
we'll see.
that's good to know. I didn't realize I had homework for tomorrow.
Yeah, you just got to
That
think.
gives me more homework than my professors do.
I really do. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't think I've even mentioned that again on the Discord, but that's been the idea for a little while. And you also get to put in tweet length reviews, and you get your name read at the end of every episode of Super Hero Rewind. And since these are two different reviews, we gotta do it, or commentaries, we gotta do it right now. So I'm gonna share my screen over here with you, Austin. Have you not been able to see me this whole time?
No, I assumed you did that because of bandwidth. Because I know last time we did a commentary, we had to stop halfway through.
Yeah, I didn't actually do it this time on purpose, but it probably helped, so that's fine.
Yeah, it's no issue.
Anyway, would you help me go back and forth on these?
Yes, let me just zoom in on this so I can actually see. Because I found out today I need glasses, so I'm gonna have to do that.
Sorry about that, man. You're gonna be in the club with us four eyes.
Yeah, that's exactly how I broke it to people. I'm like, I'm in the glasses club officially today.
We want to say
You want me to
thanks
start,
to.
or are you starting?
I'll start. Thanks to all of our patrons, of course, but especially our Rewind producers, and that includes One Reply,
Bill Mills,
Chewbacca's lover,
okay,
Chewbacca's lover,
Doctor, hello.
Elliot Slater.
Sorry, the way I have this, I can only see the first two. I'll zoom out a little bit
my
so I
God.
can see all of them. Sorry.
We have a whole other movie to do.
Goofster, 1, 2, 3.
Uh,
You said Elliot.
did I say Elliot Slater? Okay, Hayden Spring,
Joe Turner,
Joe Gira,
Matt Bat 68,
Michael Martin,
Stone Gassman,
The Amalgam Nation,
Thomas Edgell,
Adam March.
Damon Begay.
Oh, it's my favorite. Hot Soup.
Jacob Schneider,
Jonathan Campbell,
Justin Hayes,
Kareem Roberts,
Matthew Brody,
Michael Austin Gulick,
Miguel Rodriguez,
The Day Ghost,
Unknown Passenger,
and Wendell Jones.
There we go. We
Once
did
again,
it.
thank you guys. Really appreciate it. We're going to do this again a little bit later. And join us again in 10 minutes. We already have the show set up, so you can just jump over there right now. And we'll see you again in just a little bit. Appreciate everybody. I hope you had a lot of fun with X2. Austin, really enjoyed that discussion, man.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We definitely knocked out some good stuff.
We will see you again in just a little bit with the Daredevil Director's Cut. And apologies if you can't get your hands on that, but we'll make it as much of a podcast that you can listen to without the movie as humanly possible. We just wanted to do that one because it's where the story is.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you can't watch it with us, I mean, you just experience Daredevil's life, really.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Sure, you can watch it like Daredevil, who apparently has seen Fight Club.
We've heard Fight Club.
Yeah, he's heard, yeah. That's what happens when you improvise too many of your scenes. It's like, oh, I didn't see the movie, Matt. Yeah, neither did he. He's blind. Anyway, we'll see you in just a little bit, folks. I'm Captain Logan. This is Austin.